Chapter 1250. The cannoneer was really infuriated by Lin Ti's words. Sharp Blade was China's special forces. Every time they did something, it would not be recorded. In other words, even if some of them bled or even sacrificed themselves, no one would know. When they protected the country, all they wanted was a little trust. When they picked up their guns and opened their eyes, their first thought was this territory. The special forces soldiers she saw on TV were not them either. Sharp Blade had always been particular about coming and going like the wind. They would not walk in front of the curtain. This was the combat characteristic of China's special forces. Everyone who came here had to forget their true selves. They only had to remember one sentence at all times: protect the country from being invaded. They could not reveal their identities for missions that needed to be completed outside the country. Once the information was leaked, the problem they would face was not as simple as a mission failure. Therefore, even if they were captured, they could not leave any traces of belonging to the army. Sacrifice yourself to keep the secret. This might sound unbelievable. However, everyone in the Sharp Blade did this. However, it was such a self-righteous person who touched the bottom line of the cannoneer's heart every time he asked a question. He reached out and pulled Lin Ti's clothes over. His face was close to him. Either endure it or get lost. You. Lin Ti sneered. Then he pushed the cannoneer's arm away. So be it. I don't want to stay in such a sharp blade. If my family has power and influence, I can enter. What's the difference between this and the other troops? The officer who received the new recruits is so obviously biased. What fierce tiger of China? I think it's just worthy of its name. The cannoneer's eyes darkened. He stared at the navy called Lin Ti. Lin Ti looked like he was saying, even if you accept other people's benefits, even if I return to my original army, I won't be chased away by you. I don't want to stay here. He even made himself look like he had a backbone. The cannoneer was so angry that he clenched his left hand. Before he could move, then a loud bang was heard. A bullet brushed past the left side of Lin Ti's face. The shooting technique was extremely accurate. If there was even the slightest deviation, Lin Ti would definitely be injured. However, it was obvious that the other party was just warning him. Lin Ti's gaze immediately changed. His entire body was shocked. The young man took his gun and walked over. His voice was very indifferent. First, who told you that I came in because of my family's influence? Secondly, haven't you been guessing that there's someone in my house? I can answer you right now. My family does have a lot of power, but I don't need that kind of power to beat someone like you. You. Lin Ti was simply choked by the youth's arrogance. He was just about to say, why are you so arrogant? Aren't you relying on the older generation? Right at this moment, an off-road Hummer ferociously drove over from a distance, interrupting the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Only the word Tang was written on the car. Not to mention the cannoneer who came to welcome the new recruits. Even Lin Ti knew what the word Tang meant. The Tang sect was established with the sole purpose of solving special cases outside of the country. Unless one was a rare talent of the country, even if one's father was a first-class military officer, it would be difficult for one to enter this group. What made people concerned was that Liren had not yet undergone the internal selection. Why were they here? Just as the cannoneer was feeling puzzled, he saw a person walk out of the car. His face was calm. He could not be said to be handsome, but his morale was absolutely intimidating. Bai Zhuan, a soldier of the land, sea, and air forces, step out. A soldier of the land? Who is so awesome? Since when was such an all-round talent able to be trained in this place? Just as everyone was about to be shocked, the young man with the gun took a heavy step forward with his military shoes. His military uniform was straight and stunning. Here. That's right. This young man was none other than Bai Zhuan, who had joined the army. Compared to when he first joined the army, his skin color was a little darker. However, this only made him more angular. Under the reflection of the military uniform, his deep eyes seemed to be able to hold the mountains and rivers of the world, causing people's eyes to light up involuntarily. We've been waiting for you for a long time. I heard from young Master Tang that your computer is very good, right? Do you know how to attack the network? The person beside the car looked at Bai Zhuan with an expression of being saved. We all have equipment. Bai Juan's voice still did not change much. I've learned it. Don't be modest. Before you came, the commander of your original army gave me a call. At such a young age, you turned defeat into victory by yourself in a jungle battle, and directly destroyed the enemy's regiment commander. Such a grand feat is rare in the army. I heard that the commander of the enemy's battle was extremely angry because of you. When that person said this, he patted Bai Juan's shoulder very straightforwardly. What we need is a comrade like you. You're shameless and black-bellied. Bai Juan's expression was indifferent. You flatter me. It's just that Chief Zhao's temper is more hot-tempered. No wonder the other party's chief was angry. This soldier was not afraid of anyone. That person seemed to have obtained a treasure and laughed out loud again. Quickly get in the car. I'll give you a mission first. Okay. Bai Juan supported himself with one hand and jumped into the car. His movements were very handsome. That person sat on the Hummer and said to the cannoneer, I'll take our specially recruited soldiers first. As for the rest, some of them are not suitable to stay here. Don't talk so much to them. Just let them leave. A sharp blade does not nurture people who hold grudges. This last sentence was like a slap to Lin Ti's face. Yes, sir. The cannoneer respectfully stood up straight and saluted that person. Lin Ti was still watching this scene. His eyes were wide open, and his pupils were filled with disbelief. However, Bai Juan did not even look at him again. He just sat in the passenger seat of the Hummer in a cool manner. His young side profile was like a blade. Then the Hummer flew away, leaving only a thin layer of sand and dust behind. For a moment, the other 5 people, including the veterans who came to welcome the new recruits, had different feelings in their hearts. This was because they all knew that being able to get into that car meant that the other party had already become one of the top soldiers in the country. Lin Ti. The cannoneer opened his mouth again. His voice was neither calm nor indifferent. Now you've seen it. He didn't rely on his family background, but on his strength to enter the sharp blade. I believe that you should also know that there are at most 3 people in the country who can be recruited into the Tricky Special Forces. He is one of them. Think about his strength before you speak. He doesn't want to make a move. If he wants to make a move, 10 of you won't be able to defeat one of him. You always think that you're so powerful. Alright, the commander has just spoken. You just wait here. In 3 minutes, a car will come to pick you up and bring you back to your original army. As he spoke, he walked over. Remember, don't talk so much in the future. Chapter 1251. Lin Ti was so regretful that his intestines turned green. He had only said it casually. Being sent back by the sharp blades before he even joined the army would become the biggest joke on him. The original army would not be happy to see him go back. After the other troops heard about this, they would not accept him either. However, it was already too late. It was precisely because Bai Juan had realized the importance of the sharp blades that he would not give people like Lin Ti the slightest chance to stay. The sharp blades were the elites guarding the border of the motherland. If the people guarding this line of defense were not determined enough, then what about the people who lived inside? Uncle Tang had once said that the reason why he picked up a gun was because he did not want the girl he wanted to protect to see any war on our land one day. He was the same. The stronger he was, the more he could protect. He would not allow anyone on the national defense line to be like this. That was because his Jew lived there. It was 8 million kilometers away from him, so he would not allow it. The military Hummer sped through the no-man's land. The wind gradually grew stronger. To the east of Nepal, floating clouds floated past. The driver was very curious about Bai Juan. He casually asked, "The chief of your army is actually willing to let you come?" It had always been difficult for them to get people. Why was it so easy when it came to this guy? He was such a handsome group treasure, and his computer skills were especially good. It was said that his education was also very good. Shouldn't this kind of person be cherished in his own army? Bai Juan listened to his words and thought for a while. The corners of his mouth curled up. I guess he is setting off firecrackers now. Huh. That person did not understand. He only felt that the youth's expression now had an indescribable sense of blackness. Bai Juan continued, his voice slow. To celebrate my departure. However, he would soon regret it. There was a burst of crackling sounds. The special forces of a certain military region were really setting off firecrackers, as Bai Juan had said. The chief, surnamed Zhao, even specially asked the adjutant beside him, "Are you sure that kid was not sent back by the sharp blades?" "Chief, you forgot about this." The other side took the initiative to ask for him. "They probably won't send him back to us. That's because they haven't understood that kid's character yet." The chief, surnamed Zhao, walked over and over again. "But even if they want to send him back, we won't take him back. It's not enough to be tricked once. I won't be tricked by him a second time. Go and tell them to set off the firecrackers again." "Set off again? Release. That infuriating brat is finally gone. I'm so happy. It must be celebrated." The adjutant was speechless. This was the first time that the bureau chief couldn't do anything to the special forces soldiers. Speaking of which, Lord Bai was considered to be one of the best. But thinking about it carefully, if Lord Bai left, what would happen to those brats below? At the thought of this, the adjutant immediately reported to the old chief. "What are you stuttering for? If you have something to say, just say it." Leader Zhao's words were rather heroic. The chief had spoken. The adjutant closed his eyes and braced himself. "Chief, once Bai Juan leaves, who will be able to hold the fort in the future? The few people on our side are either perverted or the third generation of the military. Other than Bai Juan who can treat them, anyone else will be skinned alive and become a problem group. Do you think we should write a letter to Sharpblade and ask them to release Bai Juan as soon as possible?" When Leader Zhao heard this, he was so angry that his cheeks puffed up. "Are you saying that I can't control my subordinates, who came from the compound?" "Yes." No, I mean they are hard to control, hard to control." The adjutant wiped his sweat as he spoke. Leader Zhao was very proud. "If you don't write, I don't believe it. Without Bai Juan, why can't I do it? Wait a minute, go out and take a look. Why is there no sound outside?" Before the adjutant could do anything, someone came from outside. Reporting to the chief. "Speak." Leader Zhao took a sip of tea in satisfaction. The soldier hurriedly said, "They know that Master Bai has left. Now, they are planning to feed all your favorite canned food to Favorite." Favorite was an Alaskan sled dog that Bai Juan had brought with him ever since he joined the army. Now, because Bai Juan was going to Sharp Blade, he could only leave it in the original army for the time being. It was said that a loyal dog followed its master, so this military dog was not to be trifled with. Leader Zhao was so angry that his head hurt. "Why are you telling me this kind of thing? Let their captain control them." But you also said that those people's backgrounds are not simple. What if something happens? Moreover, they did not violate the military order. All the indicators are qualified. They just bought all the canned food that you like to eat." The little soldier did not dare to speak loudly. He only buzzed like a mosquito, afraid that he would anger their chief. However, no matter how soft his voice was, Leader Zhao still heard it. This group of little brats were simply too immoral. "Adjutant, make the call." "Call where?" "Call Sharpblade. Tell them to quickly finish using Bai Juan, and let him come back." The adjutant coughed softly. "You were just setting off firecrackers to celebrate his departure. I regret it now, okay?" Leader Zhao really felt that he could not be the chief anymore. That kid, Bai Juan, had definitely expected such a scene. As Leader Zhao thought about the last time he met Bai Juan, he gritted his teeth. No wonder that kid looked at me with such a meaningful smile when I gloated and handed the transfer order to him. He even told me not to regret recommending him. At that time, I was still thinking that I might be so happy that he left. How could I regret it? This brat, hang up the phone and call him back. However, the news given by the other side was that Sharpblade was not willing to let him go. Bai Juan did not plan to go back in a short period of time. Just like that, time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, the grass grew and the orioles flew. 3 years later, in early autumn, September. This was the month when all universities welcomed new students into the school. Whether it was the airport or the train station, especially the train station, one could see the signs of various universities welcoming new students at the entrance. The campus was bustling with noise and excitement. Every second and third-year senior was looking forward to having a beautiful junior for them to pursue. Therefore, most of the boys still liked to welcome new students. The entrance of the long-established A university was as crowded as all the other universities. Some people were sent to school by their parents, while others sat from south to north for more than 10 hours, just for the sake of this dream school. Most of the girls who were dragging their luggage were already sweating profusely when they reached the school gate. With their senior brothers and sisters coming to pick them up, they could heave a sigh of relief. However, there was one person in the middle who was not like this. Not only did she carry her own suitcase, but she also easily carried the suitcase of the girl next to her with one hand. Chapter 1252. The girl next to her was already dumbfounded. It was not because of anything else, but because the person who helped her carry the suitcase was even younger than her. The side of her face was fair and exquisite, and her eyelashes were so thick that they seemed to have been planted. They were as dark as crow feathers, casting a beautiful shadow under her eyes. Her hair was very long like black satin. As she carried the suitcase, it slid over her trendy long jacket that ended at her knees and her fair and slender legs. She was so beautiful that it was indescribable. Her eyes were round. Even though she had grown up, she still gave people the feeling of a little tiger. Such a person had a white cat lying on her head, wagging her tail back and forth. She was simply like a character in a comic, beautiful and cute. Who else could it be but a Jew? She was now 16 years old, and had long returned to her original surname, Biligio. After she grew up, her figure was really good. Due to her excellent genes, although she was not old, she had already grown to 168 centimeters. Under her A4 waist were two slender and fair legs. Her legs were very good-looking. She stood straight on a pair of white canvas shoes full of youth. Look, there's one there. What? A beauty. She looks so pure. You guys sit down. I'll send this girl upstairs. I'll go too. The three seniors leaned over one after another, their faces curled into a smile that they thought was handsome. One of them immediately said, "Junior, are you going to enter this dormitory building? Shall we send you upstairs?" "No, thank you." Aju turned her head and smiled. Her face was even more beautiful with red lips and white teeth. She looked like a natural person. The senior immediately said, "Don't be so polite. We'll all be schoolmates in the future. Look at you, a girl, you're so thin. There's no elevator in this dormitory building. It's tiring to carry so many suitcases up the stairs. We'll help you. This suitcase is not light. I'm afraid you won't be able to carry it," Aju said with a serious face. When the three seniors heard this, they burst into laughter. One of them put his hand on the other person's shoulder. "Go, Old Yang, show our little junior how strong you are." "No problem." Old Yang made an okay gesture. Old Yang is a sportsman. He can carry 2 or 3 boxes like yours without a problem. Aju saw that it was difficult to refuse such kindness. She tilted her head and thought for a moment. She put the box on the ground and said, "If you can't carry it, tell me. I say, junior sister, why don't you trust your senior brother so much? Your senior brother is famous for his strength. Who in our university doesn't know that I, Old Yang, am strong?" Old Yang couldn't say the words infinite strength, because all of his strength was channeled into his right hand that was holding the suitcase. He gritted his teeth tightly. "Oh my God, why is this suitcase so heavy?" "Senior brother? It's fine. I didn't perform well just now." After Old Yang finished speaking, he used all his strength to lift the box with both hands. But in less than 3 seconds, he put it back with a plop. At this moment, the surrounding people all looked in their direction. The other 2 senior brothers immediately leaned over and whispered, "Old Yang, what's wrong with you? Why are you dropping the ball at such a crucial time? All the new juniors are watching. Don't embarrass us." "No, damn it, this suitcase is so heavy." "How heavy can a suitcase be? If you can't do it, just say it. Don't find excuses." Just now, the beautiful junior sister was carrying 2 big suitcases by herself. Don't just stand there and talk. If you don't believe me, you can try it. If you can carry that suitcase upstairs, I'll treat you to a small cafeteria for a week. As long as you can get the beautiful junior sister's WeChat number, it'll be fine. You guys carry it first. Hey, I don't believe that I can't even carry a suitcase. As that person spoke, The veins on his forehead tightened. When he saw the beautiful junior sister looking at him with a meaningful gaze, he smiled awkwardly. Then, junior sister, what's in this suitcase of yours? Some daily necessities. There was the black crystal given by her big brother, who said that it could be used as a small table lamp after dark. There was the dismantled gun parts given by her second brother, and a super notebook disguised as a small suitcase. There was also the gravity buckle that she usually used. This time, the gravity buckle was given to her by her mother. It was said that it was made of black ice iron. Its surface was silver, and it looked like a beautiful bracelet on her hand. However, each of them weighed no less than 20 kilograms. Her mother put 4 of them in a suitcase, 2 on her wrists and 2 on her ankles. After all, she had to undergo military training after school started. Once military training started, she had to walk in a straight line or train to fight. Wearing the gravity buckle would not hurt others too much. These things were all put into a suitcase by her. Obviously, those senior brothers did not know that the daily necessities in this person's mouth would be so different from others. They all looked at each other, and the 3 of them worked together to lift the suitcase. However, it was still trembling. The suitcase seemed to be able to be dragged on the ground at any time, and it could not be lifted up the stairs at all. It made their faces and necks red. The onlookers all stopped and burst into laughter. A Jew did not want to make things difficult for them anymore. She walked over and said softly, "Senior brothers, I'll take the suitcase. You guys go and help the other sisters. Don't help whoever is beautiful. Also, I won't tell you my WeChat." These words were like a violent blow to the 3 boys. Next, they watched as the extremely beautiful junior sister walked past them. She carried the 2 suitcases effortlessly and walked up the stairs as if she was flying. This was really a slap in the face. The 3 seniors looked at each other and hugged their heads and cried bitterly. Since when can't we even beat a weak girl? Therefore, on the first day of school, the campus forum of university, posted a list of boyfriend strength. The one who won the first place was not a sophomore or a junior, nor was it a member of the basketball club. Instead, it was a newly enrolled beauty by Legio. He was really a boyfriend all day long. He helped many girls carry their luggage. Sometimes, he even looked cute and had 2 strands of hair on his head. Because she was the youngest and was a grade skipper, most people immediately liked her when they saw her. Moreover, where was this place? University A, the capital. Many of the people who were admitted here came from number 1 high school. In other words, some of the senior sisters, who were a Jew's fangirls in number 1 high school, immediately ran over to watch when they heard someone use the name by Legio to report. When they saw that it was the cute little Jew from back then, they wanted to pounce on her and kiss her. Chapter 1253. Back then, after a Jew was picked up by her family, she went to England. Then Vivian took her to many countries. There was no need to worry about her education. With Helian Qingshan, the top student, a Jew mastered all the high school knowledge in half a year of self-study. The place where the family went the most was India. A Jew liked to study the Buddhist Dharma, so Bailey Shangxia and the others often brought their sister there for a stroll. When the Indian monks saw their family, they began to chant scriptures without any regard for their lives. They were mainly chanting to His Highness. Unfortunately, no matter how powerful the eminent monks were, they would be suppressed and unable to move in front of His Highness. Those scriptures were all in vain. However, after following her 2 brothers and her father, a Jew also began to learn how to be two-faced. She mainly learned it from her father. However, her two-faced nature was still kind, and would not be as extreme as Baligaju. In other words, a Jew had not appeared in the capital for more than 3 years. Now she had finally returned. Every school was the same. The first day of school was only to report and get acquainted with the classroom. There would not be any classes. The tutor used the evening self-study time to let the students finish their self-introductions. Then, he announced that the official military training would begin tomorrow. It would last 10 days. The local officers would come to University A for training. Students who were not feeling well would report the situation in advance. When the tutor said these things, it was inevitable that there would be people gossiping below. "Hey, do you know? I heard that the officers invited by University A every year are especially handsome. It's said that they are different from the recruits invited by other schools. Those who can come to University A for training are all sergeants and above. It's not like they're high-ranking people. They're just handsome. It's true. If you don't believe me, look at the batch of officers on our school's forum last year. At the very least, they're very tall. There's nothing crooked about them. Where? Let me see. Hey, isn't this? 2 or 3 girls gathered together. Not long after, last year's military training photos were dug up. Not to mention, those people all had noses and eyes. Even if they were not shockingly handsome, they were still considered tough. I wonder what the officers this year look like. Every girl had an innate sense of worship for soldiers. In their imagination, they always had an extra layer of brilliance compared to ordinary boys. It had to be said that because University A was the capital of the country, even the military officers were very good. But this time, there was a very big accident. It was night, and the moonlight shone in through the window, dyeing the shadows of the backlight with a layer of hairy edges. Only 2 people sat in the large military conference room. He was in his 50s, and the stars on his shoulders dazzled his eyes. However, he was the one who was standing, and his expression was very impatient. He walked over in front of the desk with his hands behind his back. The one sitting there was a young man in his early 20s. He had a bright smile on his face. It had to be said that under such circumstances, such a smile was full of black-bellied intentions. Logically speaking, at his age, he should still be in university. However, the young man was not like that. He wore many medals on his shoulders, which were only given to those who had truly made contributions. The young man's outline was very distinct, and the line from his forehead to his chin seemed to flash with a fuzzy light when the light shone on his handsome side profile. The lines and corners were well defined, as if they had been carved. It was so perfect that it was amazing. However, he did not feel anything. He leaned lazily on the back of the chair. If it were not for the handsome military uniform on his body, no one would be able to tell that he was a soldier. The atmosphere in the conference room was a little strange. The smile with the biggest star was a little bit of gnashing teeth. What did you say you were going to do? Military training for university students? Yes. That person smiled softly. Chief Zhao was really angry. You're going to take over my position, and you're going to go out and do military training for university students? You're the king of soldiers from Sharp Blade, not those newbies. I won't allow you to go. Chief, I don't have a mission now. I'm on vacation. And aren't you afraid that if you don't allow me to go, your favorite canned food will be bought out? That person also stood up. He was very polite, but the words he said were very infuriating. Chief Zhao gritted his teeth so hard that they were about to shatter. Tell me, what do you want to do in university? I don't want to answer personal questions. That person still had a faint smile on his face. Chief Zhao wanted to use something to stab someone. The adjutant hiding in the corner rushed over and hugged the old chief's waist. Chief, don't be rash. I don't think Master Bai meant that. Look, he's about to take over your position. There's no need to anger you again before you leave, right? Then what is he doing now? Chief Zhao turned around and roared. The adjutant tiptoed and began to whisper in his ear. Let him go. You can have a few days of peace. He did leave back then. He went to the Sharp Blade for 3 years. I was in pain for 3 years. Chief Zhao roared in a low voice. The adjutant reminded him. Think about this year's conference. When that person gave him the award, he mainly praised our army. He even said that our army is different from before. We are no longer a useless second-generation army. We can finally become the king of soldiers. Think about the battle achievements that he won for you. Also last time, there was Commander Liang from the neighboring army. When he saw you, he was always arrogant and said that we were a problem army that couldn't produce results. It wasn't until last year that he shut his mouth. When he saw you, he took a detour. This is all because of Bai Zhuan. So you have to be patient. Chief Zhao carefully recalled the attitude of his sworn enemy and comrade during the conference 2 days ago. He instantly felt that it was not a big deal to be angered by a certain brat. However, if he leaves, what if those bastards rebel again? Chief Zhao's voice was extremely low. After all, it was too embarrassing to say such a thing. Although the entire army was already well aware of it, the other troops still did not know. The adjutant smiled and said, "I've already asked about this. I heard that Master Bai plans to take away the few who can cause the most trouble." "All 5 of them are leaving?" Chief Zhao confirmed again. The adjutant nodded. "All of them are leaving." When Chief Zhao heard this, he turned his head and cleared his throat. He raised his attitude and said to Bai Zhuan, "Which school do you want to go to?" "A university." After the young man finished speaking, his thin, pale lips curled up. Something different rose in his pitch-black eyes. This person's expression was very indifferent even when he was fighting in the jungle. At this moment, his eyes seemed to reflect the golden light of the setting sun, mixed with an indescribable color. Chapter 1254. Captain Zhao and the adjutant could not help but be stunned when they saw this situation. "What's going on with this kid?" Captain Zhao asked his subordinate. The adjutant shook his head. The main reason was that he was also dumbfounded. Master Bai had never been like this before. He had a feeling that something was going on. Captain Zhao pondered for a moment and said, "University A doesn't belong to us. Besides, our army has never gone to schools to give people military training. I'll give a call to the army branch. You guys are with them. But I don't know if you guys have gone there to train the university students or the army. Even their leaders have to salute you when they see you. You brat, you're really going back to your old age. Of all the things you can do, you have to go and give people military training. With your identity, forget it, you guys don't have any missions recently. I'm warning you, take those bastards under you with you." "Yes." Bai Zhuan gave a perfunctory military salute with a nonchalant expression. Captain Zhao wanted to stomp his feet again. However, Bai Zhuan did not even turn his head. He walked towards his dormitory with a smile on his face. Including Bai Zhuan, there were a total of 6 people living in the dormitory. It was not like the dormitory of a university student, which was very messy. In the military camp, every dormitory was clean and spotless. Especially the quilt, which was a real square. It was like a piece of tofu, and it was a military green color. Because it was a marching quilt, the texture was very hard. So no matter what it looked like, it gave people a masculine feeling. The cups and tooth vats were placed very neatly, and everyone's black military boots stood upright under the light, just like the white poplar trees standing tall in the north of the desert. It was night now, and everyone was there. There were all kinds of sitting postures. Some had one leg up, some were holding guns, and some were sitting on the bed with their 2 long legs crossed. The bed was also divided into upper and lower bunks, but these people went to the upper bunk. Under normal circumstances, they would do a pull-up and a sweep of their long legs. They would sit on it with the wind, and their movements were very handsome. "Hey, where's Master Bai? Where did he go? Didn't we agree to play poker? Where is he?" The person who spoke was obviously a rough man from the northwest. After getting on the bed, he directly reached out and pulled his shirt. His figure was good and his face was cool. Where else could he have gone? A person who had just finished showering looked up at the mirror and revealed a face that only Li Hailu would have. He must have gone to flirt with the chief again. Now he was different from before. Compared to when he was in school, his facial features had become more chiseled, and there was a sharpness in his eyes. However, there was one thing that hadn't changed, and that was his innate hedonistic nature. "Hailu, how many times have I told you? It was the chief who invited me to tea. I didn't flirt with him." Bai Zhuan's thin lips curled up slightly as he walked in. "I'm still very afraid of old Zhao. After all, he is my superior." Everyone was speechless. "Judging from how you address him as old Zhao, I really can't tell how afraid you are of him. All right, let's put aside the matter of playing poker for now. I have good news to tell you guys here." Bai Zhuan smiled like a spring breeze. His temperament was completely natural. "It's about a vacation." Hearing this, everyone's eyes suddenly lit up. "Master Bai, do you mean that we can go out on vacation this time?" Someone jumped down from the top bunk. The smile on Bai Zhuan's lips became even wider. "You can say that. Fuck, is it going to rain red all day? In such good weather with a gentle autumn breeze. My old man actually didn't trip me up. and continued to let the army lock me up. This is not normal. Even if your old man doesn't care, my father is still worried that I will go out and harm the people. The main reason is that he is afraid that I will go to all kinds of nightclubs as soon as I come home. He even suspects that I am gay. You guys said that my father is not his biological son, but he is actually so suspicious. The person I like is clearly a girl, okay? I was just curious and went to a man's place. I am puzzled. Isn't he afraid that there will be more men in the army? You two scumbags get lost. Who's the scumbag? Have you forgotten the last time your mother came to the military camp to see you? She said that if you go home and race again, she will make sure that you won't be able to leave the military camp for the rest of your life. From the above conversation, it was enough to see how much of a scam this group of people were. No wonder Chief Zhao's head hurt when he mentioned these people. In the past, when Bai Juan didn't come, these people were just messing around on their own. It didn't affect the man surnamed Zhao to be his chief. In any case, he was just helping his superior look after this group of young masters. Moreover, this group of little brats only wanted to climb the wall at most. Ever since Bai Juan came, they had really twisted into a rope. They didn't want to climb the wall anymore. Like a real soldier, they were very good in all aspects. This small army had also become the most swift and decisive existence in the entire military region. They had completed many impossible missions, and almost everyone had battle wounds on their bodies. Sometimes it made Chief Zhao quite proud. However, there was one thing. Their ability to harm others really made him gnash his teeth in anger. The main thing was that they had even harmed him. Wait a minute, do we want to go out together? Some people felt that things would not be so good. After all, their father always hoped that someone could control them. Bai Juan did not deny it. The few of them said again, "It's not bad to go out together. We can also go to the seaside to barbecue." Bai Juan said very slowly, "The place we are going is not the seaside. It's fine if we don't choose the seaside." One of them said, "I prefer a more artistic place. Let's go to Jiangnan." Bai Juan walked over and sat down. "That's not the south either. The north is fine too. It's just that. It's not bad to go to a modern city or something. I feel like I've become a cave person." This time he seemed to have guessed correctly. Bai Juan curled his lips. "It's indeed a big city. The big city in the north, the imperial capital." This was the first reaction of the 5 people. Fuck, this is the rhythm of wanting me to go home. Among the 6 people, other than Bai Juan, 4 were from the imperial capital. The rest were from Wangjing and Junyang. They were all places with the most developed military. "It's good to go home, but I'm afraid that I'll anger my father again," someone said very seriously. It was obvious that this kind of thing was done a lot. Li Hailu also agreed with this sentence. "My father will definitely chase me all over the courtyard." Bai Juan smiled lightly and shook his finger meaningfully. "Don't worry, you won't have time to go home." "What do you mean?" Li Hailu, who was familiar with Bai Juan, gradually realized that something was wrong. Bai Juan put on the military cap in his hand and said with a faint smile, "Because the place we are going to is a school, not a military compound. We are going to be instructors for the students of University A for 10 days. We only have 12 days of vacation, so of course, we don't have time to go home." Chapter 1255. What? Instantly, the dormitory was filled with wails. Some people almost suspected that there was something wrong with their ears. "Master Bai, are you saying that you want us to give military training to the university students? Use the hard-earned vacation time?" "That's right, your understanding is correct." Bai Juan's voice was indifferent. That person did not feel that he had been praised at all. His handsome face collapsed, and he reached out to hug his head. "Oh no, this is not true. Where's the promised barbecue at the seaside swimming pool? There's no such thing." "I've decided," another person said. "Master Bai, it's good to stay in the military camp. At the very least, I can walk the dog and tease Chief Zhao." Chief Zhao was speechless. What did he mean by walking the dog and teasing Chief Zhao? "Don't stop me. I'm going to beat these bastards to death." The other 3 also said very heroically, "We're not going out." When Bai Juan heard this, He opened his eyes and glanced at this group of people. You know, I've always been very democratic. After hearing the word people, the group of people could not help but tremble. After all, the so-called democracy that Master Bai mentioned was that it was best to listen to whatever he said. These people thought that Bai Juan would use some kind of suppression method on them like before. All the hair on their bodies stood on end as they prepared to fight. Unexpectedly, Bai Juan just straightened the military cap on his head and smiled very handsomely. You can choose not to go. Then I'll give this hard-earned opportunity to the other regiments. After all, there are so many beauties in university, eh? There will always be people who are willing to go. Master Bai. The youngest one pounced over and grabbed Bai Juan's trousers. You heard wrong just now. We mean that we have to go. We absolutely have to go. Whoever doesn't let us go, we will bite them to death. Bai Juan turned around and raised his eyebrows. You mean we have to go? All of us? Of course. The 5 of them nodded together. Their attitudes were very positive. Bai Juan said concisely, I'll give you 5 minutes to pack up all your things. After 5 minutes, gather downstairs. Yes. Swoosh. A neat and uniform salute. Apart from being handsome, that kind of action was more rigid and disciplined. This was completely different from their usual image. However, when they turned around, there was an uproar. Did you hear that? A university, a beauty? Nonsense, hurry up and pack your things. Hey, look at what I'm wearing. Isn't my handsomeness very unique? Come on, not all camouflage uniforms look the same. It depends on the person. I look more handsome in it. Hearing the bustling sounds inside, Adjutant Li pressed his ear against the wooden door and happened to meet Bai Juan's eyes when he walked out. Ahem, well, the car below is ready. Bai Juan's smile did not change. Thank you. But Adjutant Li, if you want to help Chief Zhao listen to something next time, you can come in and listen. That won't be necessary. Ha 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 ha. Adjutant Li's smile froze. After all, it was disgraceful to be caught eavesdropping on the spot. It was truly too terrifying. He had never thought that Bai Juan would actually use such a method to deal with that problematic army. What do you mean by University A has the most beautiful girls? So that's what those bastards are after? Adjutant Li said in a low voice. Bai Juan curled his lips. They are soldiers, and they are also ordinary people. It is normal for them to want to find a girl they love at this age. Adjutant Li was surprised that he would answer like this. He could not help but ask, What about you? Bai Juan paused for a moment. His indifferent eyes seemed to overflow with endless gentleness. Don't you know, Adjutant Li? I've said it a long time ago. I already have someone I like. Only then did Adjutant Li remember that there was once a group of military doctors in the army. Most of them were female soldiers. They were specially assigned by the higher-ups to give psychological counseling to the soldiers. One of them had an outstanding appearance and a good background. She always looked for Bai Juan to chat. It was obvious that she was interested in Bai Juan, but before the girl could say anything, during the singing performance that night, when everyone was teasing, Bai Juan opened his mouth. He still remembered that Bai Juan's expression was very serious at that time, as if this matter had touched his bottom line. His eyes were dark as he said, I have someone I like, and I don't like anyone to make such a joke. I also ask some people to keep a distance from me. His words did not leave any face for the young lady at all. His rejection was crisp and straightforward. However, I always thought that that was just an excuse you found at that time, Adjutant Li said. After all, Bai Juan had just joined the army at that time. Not only was he the youngest, but he also had such a background. How could he join the army after having someone he liked? Bai Juan lowered his eyes and looked at the military truck outside. His voice was indifferent. She has never been an excuse for me to reject anyone. In other words, there really was such a person? Adjutant Li was dumbfounded. When he wanted to ask something more, Bai Juan, who was dressed in a military uniform, had already walked away. Some people said that when you really liked a girl, you would put her photo in your wallet for 3 or 4 years. Bai Juan had never put a Ji's photo in his wallet. Instead, he put it in the lining of his military uniform, the place closest to his heart, because he had to protect his motherland and his girl well. It was because of this kind of psychokinesis that he was able to endure many things that ordinary people could not endure, and become the person he was now. Bai Juan probably couldn't even count the injuries on his back. However, every single one of those wounds was for the sake of this piece of land. Late at night, they said that they would gather in 5 minutes. Not even a second would be missing. The 6 people got on the truck in a very cool manner. Li Hailu drove, and the other 4 stood upright in the back of the truck. Bai Juan sat in the passenger seat, and beside him was the silver-white Alaskan police dog. The scene was very cool. After the military truck drove away, Leader Zhao really thanked the heavens. He could finally live a few days in peace with canned beef. The next day, the autumn wind was refreshing, and the morning light shone all over the school. The fragrant hot air came out from the canteen. Students running in the morning could be seen everywhere on the mottled green field. There were also freshmen carrying water bottles. A Jew was the earliest to wake up among them, because she had always maintained the habit of morning exercise. She used all the weights and everything else. After all, only after morning exercise could she enjoy breakfast better. It could be said that the foodie Aju's obsession with eating had never changed. With a steamed bun in her mouth, Aju walked into the dormitory and listened to her roommates say, "Do you know? It's said that the instructors who will give us military training will arrive at the school at 10 o'clock. They will all come by military truck. The scene will definitely be very handsome. Do you want to go and see it?" Chapter 1256. Of course we have to go and see it. We can't fall behind the other dormitories, right? One of her roommates had a very straightforward personality. She pulled a Jew, who was holding a steamed bun in her mouth, over and winked at her. The person beside her laughed. "Don't ask a Jew. A Jew definitely won't go and see it. Our little cutie likes to eat, right? Little cutie." That person really liked a Jew. As she spoke, she even rubbed a Jew's beautiful and cute little face. A Jew swallowed the steamed bun in her mouth and said seriously, "No, I want to go and see it too. Only good food and handsome men can't be let down. Everyone, we really didn't expect you to be like this." The power of a single dormitory could be imagined. However, the people in this dormitory did not expect that there would be so many onlookers. Their power was nothing in front of the vast masses of the people. This was enough to show that the instructors invited by university were indeed different from other schools. From afar, one could see military green pickup trucks driving over from afar. The tall officers in the back of the truck were all wearing military caps and camouflage clothes. They really became an eye-catching scenery. However, from where a Jew and the others were standing, they really could not see anything. Even if they stood on their tiptoes, they could only see the back of the black heads in front of them. There was also a series of deafening noises. There were indeed many fangirls who liked soldiers. "I wonder which instructor is from our class. Look at that one, the one at the front. His legs are so long, and his back is so straight. Could it be that soldiers nowadays are recruited based on appearance? How is that possible? The army that this group of people came from is not ordinary. I heard that they are the best army in our country. Usually, you can't even see them even if you want to. Wow, so powerful. Of course, this is one of the benefits of university, eh?" A Jew and the others did not even see anyone in the dormitory. There was a lot of discussion around them, and an endless stream of news came one after another. Looking over row after row, the girls cupped their faces. Originally, this scene was quite harmonious, but some boys were sandwiched in it and blushed together. "What's wrong with this world? I can't see it at all." Her roommate next to her sighed in disappointment. Even when the military vehicle stopped, they still didn't walk to the front. There was a little white cat on Aju's head. In fact, it was easy for her to get there with her skills, but it was not good to cut in line, so she could only turn around and comfort her sisters in the same dormitory. "Don't worry. Anyway, you will see it when we gather in the afternoon. I think you should go back to the dormitory to put on makeup and change your clothes first. If other people waste so much time here, they will definitely not have a good rest at noon, so they will forget to take a shower and put on facial masks and makeup." Hearing this, the 3 roommates immediately turned their heads. "Aju. Aju's round almond-shaped eyes were stunned for a moment. She did not understand why her roommates looked so excited. One of them pulled Aju over. "You're really smart. Big sister admires you very much. Don't tell anyone about this. Let's go back to the dorm now." "That's right. Let's go back now." The other one chuckled. "It's not easy to find a handsome instructor. We have the cutest little junior sister in the school. Quickly dress her up. When the time comes, let Aju act cute, and we'll have everything." Aju was speechless. The people from Aju's dormitory had just left. The soldiers on the military trucks all jumped down one by one. They jogged, their heels touching each other heavily. They stood in a standard military posture and saluted. That kind of cool and experience was indeed something that ordinary men couldn't compare to. The person who welcomed them was a school leader. He happily stretched out his hand. "Welcome. We sincerely welcome you to come to our University A for military guidance." The person standing at the front put down his hand from his military cap and smiled. "Professor Liang, you're too polite. The chief has told us that you're old classmates. It's only right for us to come." Good, good, good. Professor Liang said the word good 3 times in a row, and was about to lead the talented instructor inside. Then he heard another sound coming from behind. This sound was even louder than before. There were even girls who could not help but scream. It was not because of anything else, but because another military vehicle had appeared behind the 2 military vehicles. This time, it was not enough to describe the people on the military vehicle as capable and experienced. Other than the unique temperament of soldiers, each of them seemed to have their own characteristics. They wore pure black sunglasses, a 1-yard belt, and straight military boots. When they walked, they seemed to be able to bring up a gust of wind. Especially the one walking at the front. He had a handsome nose, a perfect side profile, good-looking lips, long legs, and a narrow waist. His temperament was cold. His camouflage uniform made him look like a special forces soldier. His pair of dark and deep peach blossom eyes reflected the bright autumn sun. When he swept his gaze across the crowd, there was always a feeling of being electrocuted. "Oh my God, is this really not a TV series? I'm going crazy. How can he be so handsome? If he was our instructor, I would be willing to stand in military posture for an entire day. I don't need to sleep today. The one standing behind him is also handsome. I feel like touching him. My God, my nose is going to bleed. Don't you think that they look about the same as us? They seem to be a little younger than the previous batch of instructors. They should be new recruits. I heard that new recruits are very young. They are about the same age as university students. Some are even younger than us. Who cares what kind of soldier he is? We must have this kind of instructor." When Professor Liang saw this scene, he raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Captain Li, this is?" After all, every year during military training, the military vehicles would arrive together. Everyone knew that the most important thing in the army was discipline. How could there be people who were late? What's more, there were 6 of them. Captain Li also frowned. Then he smiled and said, "They are from another unit. They were added at the last minute." "I see." Professor Liang smiled. "Then let the soldiers rest for a while and have lunch. After lunch, let the students gather on the field as usual." Okay. Captain Li was fine with it. However, Vice Captain Zhang, who was standing next to him, glanced at the new person who appeared with a face full of disapproval. "Captain, where did this new recruit come from? How can he not know the rules?" Captain Li said in a low voice. "The regiment commander said that they were far away, so they probably came late." "It's not that they are far away, but that they haven't been trained by the army. Look at the way they walk. Do they really think that they are from the special forces? How funny." Chapter 1257. Of course, the soldiers who were approaching heard this person's words. However, there was one thing. They had indeed come late, so they were in the wrong. Therefore, they did not say anything. Instead, they stood behind Bai Zhuan with strong eyes. With Master Bai around, they would not talk nonsense in public. This was the rule. As for Bai Zhuan, he only glanced at that person casually. Like a pine tree, he extended his hand to Captain Li. "Unit 211, here to report." He did not salute. Vice Captain Zhang, was not convinced by this matter. He snorted coldly and said arrogantly, "Didn't the captain of your original unit tell you to salute when you see a superior who is higher than you?" Hearing this, the 5 of them rolled their eyes at him in their hearts. Salute? Superior? Master by shaking hands with your captain was already giving your captain a lot of face. Even your captain had to salute Master by when he saw him. Besides, even if they did not know Master Bai's original identity, the stars on his shoulder were the same as their captain's. This person was either blind or purely looking for trouble. The latter was most likely. It was obvious that this person did not like them. However, Bai Zhuan only curled his thin lips with a faint smile. Then he turned around and pointed at his shoulder. His voice was very faint with a unique magnetism. "Didn't the captain of your original army tell you that you have to salute when you see a superior who is higher than you?" The man surnamed Zhang had just said the same thing. However, he was choked by Bai Zhuan's words and could not refute anything. The person in front of him did it on purpose. He deliberately used his original words to stop him. You. Bai Zhuan swept a glance over him, as cold as ice. "Why aren't you saluting?" Captain Li knew that his vice-captain was too impulsive, so he warned in a low voice, "Salute." Vice-Captain Zhang gritted his teeth. He had no choice but to reluctantly salute Bai Zhuan. When Bai Zhuan's people saw this, they immediately replied to Captain Li in unison. They had always been polite. Bai Zhuan smiled and said to Captain Li, "Captain Li should have received the news as well. I hope that we can complete the mission in these 10 days. That's what we should do." Captain Li was the kind of man who really did not care about trifles. He reached out and shook Bai Zhuan's hand. Vice-Captain Zhang's anger continued to rise as he watched from the side. It was one thing for a group of recruits to be so unruly, but they also made him lose face in public. Although Professor Liang had already started walking in that direction, there were still many university students around. They were the most outstanding team in the army. How could they be humiliated by these random soldiers who came from nowhere? Sooner or later, he would get his revenge. Some people saw that Vice-Captain Zhang was unhappy. They came over and said to him, "Vice-Captain, this is nothing. Let's wait and see. When the military training starts, there will be a shooting competition. Those recruits definitely don't know anything. When the time comes, we will crush them with our strength. Let's see if they will be dumbfounded." When Vice-Captain Zhang heard this, his eyes finally lit up. That's right. When the real military training begins, these wild soldiers will have a good time. Everyone was ready to go. They were going to follow Professor Liang into the cafeteria for lunch before facing the students again. Only Bai Zhuan's eyes were looking at the crowd intentionally or unintentionally along the way. The few soldiers following behind him all felt that their master Bai was not normal today. If one were to say that he was looking at beauties, no, that was impossible. They had seen Master Bai never look at women when he was on a mission. It should be said that regardless of whether it was a woman or a man, in front of him, there was only the difference between a comrade and an enemy. Even if there were some missions that required them to participate in international balls, with many beauties gathered, Master Bai could still pass through thousands of flowers without being stained by a single leaf. He remembered that once, someone wanted to use a honey trap on Master Bai to get him to tell them his original army and real name. In the end, that woman was so infatuated with Master Bai that she was able to get everything out of him. Therefore, he was definitely not looking at a beauty. Then what was he looking at? It couldn't be that he was looking at a man, right? Stop. Don't think about this horrifying idea anymore. Don't you think it's strange? Master Bai personally brought us here to give military training to the university students. This is very strange in itself. Young Master Li, go and ask quick. Li Hailu thought to himself that even if they didn't say anything, he had to ask. In front of so many people, he had to pay attention to his superiors and subordinates. He couldn't directly shoulder them, so he simply leaned over and said in a low voice, "Hey, what were you looking for just now?" His eyes didn't leave him. Looking for a Jew. Bai Zhuan's voice was still very indifferent, and it sounded like there was no change in his mood. However, it was these 3 words that made Li Hailu, who was full of arrogance, freeze on the spot. The rest of the people had never seen Li Hailu like this before. They asked curiously, "What's going on? What's wrong with young Master Li?" Li Hailu had always felt guilty about that incident back then. He always felt that if it wasn't for him, Gu Rou wouldn't have pushed Aju out so easily, and Aju would have left the Bai family. Although Bai Juan had always said that this matter had nothing to do with him, Li Hailu still missed Aju. After all, they had watched her grow up. He would always remember Aju's appearance when she was young. She had a big bald head. When they played games, she would run up and down to get food for them to eat. The time when one was young was always missed the most. Sometimes, when Li Hailu thought about it, his throat would feel uncomfortable. This was also why he wanted to be smarter, and really chose to join the army. In the past, when he saw girls, he didn't care about anything else. Now he really felt that what Aju said was right. The women at the foot of the mountain are tigers. Therefore, for so many years, Li Hailu had always given people the appearance of a hedonistic young master. Even if women really came, he had already learned how to distinguish their purpose of approaching him. However, what Bai Xuan said still made his entire body tremble. He couldn't even speak clearly. "Aju is here?" "Yes." Bai Xuan smiled. He was handsome with bright eyes and white teeth, but there was a feeling in his voice that only the two of them could understand. "Hailu, you miss her too, right?" Bai Xuan had just entered the army, and Li Hailu had followed him. For more than 3 years, they had not seen Aju even once. But at the same time, Li Hailu knew better than anyone else. No matter how much he missed her, it was not as heavy as Bai Xuan's. He still remembered the first year after he entered the army. The young man who he thought would never cry leaned against the wall in the middle of the night and whispered the word Aju. He thought, after so many years, why didn't he see how much Bai Xuan liked Aju? If he didn't love her too much, why would he miss her so much that he cried? Chapter 1258. If that was the case, it explained why Bai Xuan came to University A for military training. So Aju was here. After missing her, there was an indescribable excitement. Li Hailu did not care whether he was outside or not. He grabbed Bai Xuan's arm and asked excitedly, "Is Aju a new student who came to report this year? Which class is she in?" Such an action would naturally attract the attention of Vice Commander Zhang, who had always disliked them. After hearing the noise, Vice Commander Zhang looked behind him. The expression on his face was clearly saying that they were too noisy. Li Hailu did not have the time to care about that group of people. His hand was still holding Bai Xuan, insisting on an answer. Bai Xuan, on the other hand, curled his thin lips and seemed to be in a good mood. "I don't know yet, but I should be able to see her when we gather later." "Oh right, when we gather, all the freshmen will be there." Li Hailu laughed out loud. "I wonder what Aju looks like now." It had been more than 3 years. The little guy should have grown taller. Back then, what he cared about the most was her height. He really wanted to hug her. "Brother, when the time comes, I'll find her for you. I'll let them all find her for you." Bai Xuan looked at him calmly and said, "You can find her, but you can forget about hugging her." Li Hailu was speechless. "Bai Xuan, you're really jealous." Although the 4 people behind him did not know what had happened, they seriously felt that Bai Xuan was very different today. The key was, who was he looking for? Weren't they here to give the beautiful university students military training? How did it become looking for someone? The problem army looked at each other in dismay. It was as if they could no longer figure out Bai Xuan's routine. On the other side, in the noisy female dormitory, the 3 roommates were working together to dress up their cute little junior sister. "How about drawing eyeliner? Aju has such beautiful eyes, so there's no need to draw eyeliner. If you draw it, you'll look demonic." "Then how about sticking fake eyelashes? Do you still need to stick Aju's eyelashes?" "Aju, don't blink. If you blink again, I'll pluck out all your long eyelashes." Aju, who was threatened, sat down obediently. She held the little white cat in her hand and said very seriously, "You guys have been discussing for 15 minutes. Why don't I have a meal first, and you guys can discuss it?" "No. We only have inspiration when we look at your face." "Exactly." Her face was pleasing to the eye and smooth to the touch. "Got it. What? Doesn't Nine have a pair of tiger ears? Let her wear it." Then, he would draw a little heart on the left side of her face. He didn't need to do anything else. mainly because he didn't want to affect her natural beauty. Not all girls were suitable for drawing hearts on their faces. But for someone like a Jew, once it was drawn, it would make her small face look even more youthful. Coupled with a pair of furry cat ears, it was simply perfect. Alright, I'll use this face to confuse the instructors. Old Wu looked at his masterpiece with satisfaction. Another roommate directly handed the big steamed bun in his hand to Cutie Chong. A Jew, you don't have to do anything when the time comes. Just stand there obediently, and look at others with your big round eyes. That's acting cute. Oh, a Jew said as she brought the steamed bun over. She ate it with a pair of big eyes and a small face. The three of them could not resist her cute appearance. They all pounced on her, and each of them kissed her. A Jew's body was distorted by the kiss, but she did not forget to say, "You have to leave this enthusiasm for handsome men. Even handsome men can't compare to our cute pets. Give me another kiss." Looking at the rice balls and snacks that the three of them bought for a Jew, one could tell how much they liked a Jew. One had to know that not every dormitory had such a cute pet. After the few of them finished dressing up, more than half of the time had passed. One had to know that no matter how beautiful they were, they could only be beautiful for one day. After the assembly, they would be issued a uniform camouflage uniform. For 10 days, they were not allowed to wear skirts, shirts, or anything else. Moreover, they would wake up very early every day. Not to mention putting on makeup. They could not even sleep in properly. Therefore, the girls would cherish this last day and dress themselves up as beautifully as they could. After all, it was the nature of every girl to love beauty. It was because of this that they looked exceptionally cute. When the bell rang, groups of freshmen gathered on the field. There were freshmen from all classes. As far as the eye could see, the scene was really spectacular. A century-old famous school was not just for show. The scale was large to begin with. In addition to the school's appearance, it seemed that just by standing in the middle, one could feel the youthful flamboyance that belonged to their age. Alright students, quiet down. Professor Liang stood on the podium with a smile. Let's welcome all our instructors this time. As soon as Professor Liang finished speaking, the sound of uniform footsteps could be heard on the field. It was the sound of military boots stepping on the ground when they took a proper step. In an instant the boys clapped. Of course, at most, it was because the fangirls wanted to see handsome men. Everyone stood on their tiptoes and looked. Is the instructor who came last in the morning here? Yes. I saw him. He's right at the front of the line. So handsome. The more I look at him, the more handsome he becomes. We must get him to be our instructor later. We'll leave this matter to Zitong. There's definitely no problem. The students were divided into groups according to their classes. A Jew's class was in the far right corner. She also stood on her tiptoes to take a look. There was still an ear on her head, but she couldn't see anything. She lowered her head and looked at her stomach. It looked a little like a small animal wagging its tail. A Jew had a roommate standing behind her. She said in a low voice, "A Jew, remember what the sisters said. Whether we can keep the most handsome instructor or not depends on you. I think it's a little mysterious." Another person touched his chin. "You forgot that there are a few beauties in our batch. The most competitive one is that Lu Zitong from the Performing Arts Department. Although she's not as beautiful as our Jew, and she's not as cute as our Jew, her department is standing in front of our department. In the end, it's still the archaeology department that's not popular. Everyone says that our people are the same as our department. They're all country bumpkins. If they're not tomboys, they're all ancient tombs." A Jew raised her big eyes and said very seriously, "It's very fun in the ancient tomb." This child thinks she's been to the ancient tomb again. That person shook his head and patted a Jew's head. "Alright, be good. Stop fantasizing. Going to the ancient tomb is after graduation. Now your main task is to act cute and keep the instructor. You have to be the most handsome one, understand?" A Jew nodded and said, "This kind of thing depends on fate. When I went out today, I divined for our class." Chapter 1259. Ever since they were in the same dormitory as a Jew, the three of them realized that a Jew seemed to be very talented in fortune-telling. At first they did not believe it. After all, they were all materialists. How could they believe the words of some monsters? But a Jew actually calculated what each of them had encountered in the past. This made the three girls instantly kneel down. Not only could the cute pets in their dormitory flirt, but they could also predict good or bad luck for people. Moreover, their accuracy was somewhat bizarre. Therefore, when they heard that a Jew had done a divination before they went out, they immediately became excited. How was it? A divination? At this point, a Jew paused and smiled. It was very beautiful. We will get what we want. The three of them looked at each other. In other words, our instructor will be a handsome guy? Of course. Oh yeah, but... A Jew touched her swollen belly again. Our location is indeed not very good. We might encounter some twists and turns. The three of them were speechless. Forget it. Anyway, the location is not good. Even if the instructor is not handsome, we still have you. Hearing this, a Jew was a little stunned. The furry little tiger ears on her head stood up. When did she have the same function as a handsome guy? Because of the appearance of Baijuan and the others, some of the students who were close to the platform had already secretly taken out their phones and started to take photos. Professor Liang did not directly object to their behavior. Instead, he said humorously, "When the instructors go down later, they will reserve time for everyone to take photos. However, students, you have to think carefully. Whoever takes out their phones will be confiscated by the form teacher. You are not allowed to play with your phones during military training. This is the most basic requirement. As for the other requirements, your instructors will tell you one by one. Now please go down and take a look. Then, we will discuss how to allocate the classes." After hearing Professor Liang's words, some of the students wished that they could directly wave at Baijuan and let him look here and there. Whether it was his face or figure, Baijuan was perfect to the extreme. Even his good-looking thin lips were shining. It was no wonder that some of the girls were so excited that they grabbed the hand of another student. In the entire field, almost all the students were looking at him. However, in Baijuan's eyes, it was as if those gazes did not exist. They did not affect him in the slightest. That handsome face was still so handsome and noble that it made people want to scream when they saw it. There was not the slightest ripple. He strode forward with his long legs, dressed in a military uniform. His dark and deep eyes swept over everyone in the class intentionally or unintentionally. Look, what is he looking at? He seems to be looking at us. I don't think so. I saw it just now. It seemed like they were looking for someone. Lu Zidong, who was standing at the front of the team, was the most confident. She wore a red plaid skirt and a white t-shirt. Her long hair was tied into a bun, and her face was covered in natural Korean-style nude makeup. Her lip color was very successful, and her temperament and figure were particularly outstanding. When she saw Baijuan pass by their class, her lips curled into a smile. But at this moment, Vice Captain Zhang in the team opened his mouth and looked at Baijuan provocatively. "I'm in this class. Don't tell me that Captain Bai doesn't want to give it to me? Up to you." Baijuan's tone was very indifferent, so indifferent that he did not have the time to pay attention to this person at all. Right now, the only thing in Baijuan's mind was to find his girl. However, Vice Captain Zhang did not know anything. He thought that Baijuan did not have the guts to compete with him at all. He stood in front of the acting class 1 proudly. The students from the performing arts department were all going crazy. They didn't want this instructor at all. That intense gaze made it difficult for Vice Captain Zhang to ignore it. Every one of them, even the most beautiful female student, looked at Baijuan's back and bit their lips reluctantly. This scene completely ignited Vice Captain Zhang's jealousy. He did not know where this wild soldier came from. Just because he was a little more handsome, he did not know how to restrain himself. How could such a person be compared to them? They were the soldiers that the students should worship. Just wait. Sooner or later, he would give this guy a good lesson. It would also let the students know that the person they were looking at now was not a dog shit. There's hope. We have hope. The girls from the archaeology department clenched their hands tightly. The few people from a Jew's dormitory immediately placed a Jew at the front of the team. They had already decided that if they could really wait until the handsome guy passed through the other 4 major departments and came to their archaeology department, they would offer incense to a Jew every day in the future. It had to be said that there was really hope because from afar, they could see the handsome guy walking past one class after another. Although he would look carefully, he did not stop in front of any class. A Jew, it's almost time. There are only 3 classes left before it's our turn. A Jew calmly comforted them. Don't worry. If that person comes over, he will definitely choose us. Why? A Jew said seriously. Because we are the last class. If he doesn't choose us, who else can he choose? Her roommates were speechless. They really could not refute this reason. When she said these words, a Jew did not raise her head. She had been looking at her bulging stomach. From just now, she had felt that something was wrong. She seemed to be probably on her period. The more she thought about it, the more it came to her. The good things did not work, but the bad things worked surprisingly well. A Jew frowned. Could it be that the twists and turns mentioned in the divination were that she had relatives visiting? Why did it have to be at this time? Did it come early? The soreness and discomfort in her lower abdomen had already turned into a faint pain. She felt that there was suddenly a warm current in her lower abdomen that was gurgling without any warning. What should she do? She was wearing white jeans today, so the strength just now must have been a little exposed. If she stood up like this, someone would definitely see her. Why don't she squat down? So many people were looking at the handsome guy, so no one would notice her if she squatted down. A Jew, who had been thinking about things with her head lowered, did not know that at that moment, the eyes of the handsome instructor, who had been discussed for a long time, lit up. It was as if thousands of fireworks were reflected in his eyes. He suddenly walked toward their last class without any warning. Everyone's eyes followed him as he moved. Only a Jew, who had a stomachache, reached out and hugged her lower abdomen. With a pair of furry tiger ears, she squatted in the middle of the team. There was cover in front and behind, so her action was not sudden. Instead, it was very cute. However, what a Jew did not expect was that as soon as she squatted down, a dark green military jacket covered her head. It did not pass her waist and hung down her thighs, just enough to cover her white jeans. Chapter 1260. A Jew froze without warning. The faint smell of tobacco on the military uniform mixed with the fresh ink fragrance of orange blossoms instantly filled her entire nasal cavity. From her point of view, she could only see a pair of pure black military boots. The shoes were shiny and spotless. It was as if they were as noble and unruly as their owner. Everyone around a Jew covered their mouths with their hands and could not help but gasp. A Jew did not need to raise her head to sense the gazes gathered on her side. What exactly happened? Who threw this military uniform at her? Was it the new instructor? She had already hidden herself so well, but she was still discovered? A Jew was about to stand up to confirm the situation when she found that someone had also squatted down like her. That pair of long legs that were originally straight were half bent on the ground. He seemed to be looking at her from the side. Then the other party actually placed his hand on her head. A Jew paused and suddenly raised her eyes. That familiar yet unfamiliar face appeared in front of her without any warning. It was so close that it was just a breath away. The sunlight shone down from the top of his head and flowed in his eyes. It was like those childhood memories that had returned, bright and dazzling. He looked at her with a smile. There was a faint arc at the corners of his mouth. His pair of peach blossom eyes were black and white and beautiful, but his gaze was burning bright. Looking at him like this, a Jew suddenly remembered that when she was very young, the two of them were lying on the bed together. He was not very old when he was holding her in his arms and telling her a bedtime story. He had read a passage from a novel to her. That passage was written like this: "In this world, there will always be such a person who will appear when you need him the most. Whether you are surrounded by light or standing alone in a corner, he will definitely find you. Then, he will pass through the most turbulent crowd and come to hug you." A Jew. He called her name. His voice was very low and gentle, as if there was quicksand slowly flowing through his ears. It was very similar to what he often heard when he was young, but compared to that time, it was even more magnetic. He was still smiling, but a Jew was in a daze. with a pair of little tiger ears. She could not help but reach out to touch Bai Juan's face. The touch from her fingertips was very soft. Was he really her little brother? Aju blinked her round cat eyes. There was a pink heart painted on the side of her face. It was so beautiful that it was a little bubbly. Bai Juan looked at his beautiful child who was stunned. Without thinking, he bent down and directly carried her up horizontally. He used his military uniform to cleverly cover Aju's face. His action immediately caused an uproar in the field. Everyone was looking in his direction. The girls wished they could transform into the person he was carrying. However, other than the few people in Aju's dormitory, no one knew who he was hugging, because the green military uniform draped over her body happened to cover Aju's face, only revealing the two small tiger ears on her head. Li Hailu stood far away, but when he saw Bai Juan's action, his eyes lit up in a minute. However, the others didn't know what was going on. All of them were in a state of crash. What's the situation? What's the matter with the instructor? Voices rose and fell one after another on the sports field, all of which were the voices of the students discussing. The adjutant surnamed Zhang also looked in Bai Juan's direction, as if he was about to open his mouth to stir up trouble. However, before he could open his mouth, Bai Juan straightened his two overly slender legs. His pitch-black eyes looked at the podium. His voice was very calm, and there was not a trace of fluctuation in it. Professor Liang, this student is not feeling well. I'll send her to the infirmary first. Professor Liang was obviously a little unable to react. He thought that this person's eyesight was really good. There were so many students, but he could not even see a person's face clearly. The other party could even see that someone was not feeling well. He was really amazing. Bai Juan did not seem to have thought of hearing Professor Liang's agreement. After saying that, he walked through the square formation formed by the students. His side profile was still incomparably handsome. He just hugged Aju, as if there was no one else around. Aura was really a very selective thing. Even if he left just like that, Professor Liang did not say anything. Instead, the entire scene felt shocked. His straight military uniform depicted his tall and straight back. Gradually, until he could no longer be seen, no one on the sports field dared to speak. Aju's roommates were basically in a state of wandering souls. They only wanted that handsome man to be their instructor, but they did not want Aju to use the trick of self-injury. However, Aju's trick of self-injury was really worth it. Not only did she complete the mission perfectly, but she also got such a princess carry. The scene just now could not be more awesome. However, the soldiers did not think so. They could not wait to immediately follow him and see who was in Bai Juan's arms. What a joke. When had Master Bai ever treated a girl like this? Those beautiful military doctors bit their lips and fell in front of him. He would not even help them, and directly hand them over to his assistant. Even if there were really students who were not feeling well, Master Bai would have already instructed them. How could he personally touch them? They had always suspected that Master Bai either liked men or was allergic to women. But today, he actually knew how to hug someone. They had to see who exactly made Master Bai, this evildoer, fall in love with someone. Seeing through the thoughts of these four people, Li Hailu directly blocked in front of them. Go and choose the class first. Don't choose the one that Bai Juan chose. If you don't take the other classes, they will all be taken by others. Compared to these things, Master Bai is more important. Bah! What I mean is that Master Bai's relationship is more important. Of course, Li Hailu could not let them go over. Right now, Bai Juan probably wanted to be alone with Aju the most. Otherwise, he would not have thought of such an excuse. This student was not feeling well and needed to go to the infirmary. He clearly felt that the people around him were in the way. I advise you not to go over, Li Hailu said very cautiously. Of course, the soldiers would not be so obedient. Young Master Li, aren't you curious about who has such great charm for our Master Bai to hug? Li Hailu shook his head. I'm not curious because I know who it is. Who is it? The four of them widened their eyes. Li Hailu was very carefree. Do you still remember that Bai Juan said a long time ago that he had someone he liked? That was completely an excuse used by Master Bai to block the peach blossom, okay? Someone obviously did not believe it. Li Hailu was not in a hurry. Since you don't believe this, Then you should know that there is a photo in the lining of Bai Xuan's military uniform, right? Chapter 1261. Of course I know. Master Bai treasures that thing more than he treasures himself. They could not understand how a photo could be treated as a treasure. Li Hailu announced the answer. The girl he's hugging now is the girl in the photo. Young Master Li, don't talk nonsense. Master Bai's photo is clearly of a young monk. We even risked our lives to look at it for a while. After Master Bai found out, the canteen didn't give us meat for half a month. That's right. Li Hailu silently raised his head. I once thought that she was a young monk, but reality proved that she was a girl. You should know her company. Which company? Juwei Group. The 4 soldiers were shocked. That famous little princess? Li Hailu smiled. Yes, Bai Xuan was once her guardian. The 2 of them lived together for 8 years. At that time, Bai Xuan fell in love with her. Even after entering the army, he couldn't help but inquire about her every year. However, he didn't go to see her, because he felt that it wasn't time yet. Now that the time has come, are you sure you want to disturb him at this time? You should understand Master Bai's character. The 4 soldiers were speechless. They really understood. Master Bai was definitely the kind of person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. They had originally planned to barge in no matter what young Master Li said. Now they should obediently stay and choose the military training class. One had to know that compared to curiosity, if they ruined Master Bai's long-awaited reunion, Master Bai would definitely make them eat vegetarian for half a year and cut off all their entertainment activities. Master Bai's relationship with their parents was very good. If they joined forces to suppress them, they would definitely have no way out. Therefore they would not go and look. They would stay. Li Hailu was very satisfied with the result of his words. It was also because Bai Xuan was usually shameless enough. The selection on the field was still continuing. Some people were jealous that someone could be treated like that by Bai Xuan. They snorted coldly in dissatisfaction. The people from the acting department also said, "He's really better at acting than us. He can feel uncomfortable at any time, but he has to feel uncomfortable at this time. He really thinks that he's Sister Lin. But why is our instructor so ordinary? Although he's not bad-looking, he's far worse than the one just now. Don't say any more. He'll hear you later." In fact, Adjutant Zhang had already heard it. The more the students discussed, the darker the light in his eyes became. He looked at the back of the figure that disappeared at the end of the field, and once again, he made up his mind to teach the other party a lesson. The people on this side were different. On the other side, a Jew was being hugged by Bai Xuan the entire time. She felt that it was a little unreal. During the 3 years that she had been overseas, she had written many letters to her little brother. Every time he sent it out, there was no reply. She even went to the Bai family to take a look. Even Grandpa Bai had followed the army to the southwest border. There was no one at home. The people in the compound said that the little brother had joined the army, but no one knew which unit he had joined. At that time a Jew was still young. She held a large pile of gifts that she had collected from abroad in her arms. She stood at the entrance of the Bai family's house and cried. She finally understood what her little brother had always said in the past. "On my birthday, I don't want anything. I just want you to be there." But it was too late. There were also people who said that not replying to letters meant that they did not want to contact that person. After all, she had asked her brothers to find out where her little brother was. There was still no reply to the letters she sent out. Now, her little brother was right in front of her, so close. A Jew stretched out her hand again and grabbed Bai Xuan's sleeve. Bai Xuan lowered his head and looked at the person in his arms. A lock of black hair fell in front of his eyes disobediently with his movements, setting off his dark and deep eyes, causing his unruly temperament to gradually reveal itself. However, his voice was low and gentle. "We'll be there soon. Bear with it a little longer." After turning the corner, they arrived at the school's infirmary. When the doctor in the infirmary saw that it was the officer who carried the girl in, he thought that something had happened. He immediately walked over and asked, "What's wrong? Where are you feeling unwell? Is it a heat stroke?" A Jew was about to speak. She was interrupted by Bai Xuan's indifferent voice. It's not a heat stroke. Her relatives are here. Her stomach hurts. The doctor in the infirmary was also shocked by Baijuan's calm attitude. Wait a minute, she was asking about the girl, right? How could this officer know the symptoms better than the patients themselves? Not to mention this kind of illness, Aju herself was also a little embarrassed. After all, she was not a child anymore. She blushed a little from Baijuan's answer, and buried her head even deeper. When Baijuan saw her actions, the corners of his mouth curled up. That smile was very beautiful and bright. Seeing this, the school doctor coughed lightly twice. If it's a relative, I don't recommend taking medicine if the pain isn't too bad. It's not good for the stomach. I have brown sugar here. Let her drink some. There's a place to rest inside. You can put her on the bed first, and let her rest for a while. She should feel much better. After hearing this, Baijuan thanked her, and walked into the inner room. He placed Aju on a pure white bed. Although there was no door between every bed and every bed in the infirmary, they were separated by layers of white cloth hanging on the walls. The school doctor brought in the bag of ginger and brown sugar that she often drank, and was about to send Baijuan away. Master Bai opened his mouth again with a noble smile. Thank you for the brown sugar, doctor. I'm here. You can go and rest. The school doctor choked. She suddenly felt that her lines had been stolen by the other party. However, she could not say anything else. After all, he was the other party's instructor. During military training, the instructor was equivalent to the head teacher of each class. It was only right for him to care about the students. Comforting herself like this, the school doctor did not feel that there was something wrong with her IQ. Aju was lying on the bed obediently. A pair of round dragon eyes were wandering around. Baijuan had already taken out a piece of chocolate from his military uniform. Then, he tore open the packaging and handed it to her lips. Aju did not stand on ceremony and took a bite. Baijuan's habit of bringing chocolate was something that Aju had when she first had her period that year. Sometimes, Aju's stomach would hurt, and she could not eat anything. She only wanted to eat chocolate. This seemed to be a common problem in the Bailey family. Ever since then, Master Bai, who had never eaten sweets, would always carry a piece of chocolate with him. Other than himself, no one knew who he had prepared it for. It seems to have melted a little. Baijuan looked at the spot where her little face was stained with the chocolate. His lips curled into a smile, and he was indescribably doting. Aju's fingers were still tugging at his sleeve, as if she was afraid that he would suddenly disappear. It's still very delicious even if it melts. Is that so? Baijuan laughed softly. Then I'll try it too. As he said that, he suddenly leaned over. Chapter 1262. His slightly cold thin lips imprinted on the corner of Aju's mouth without any warning. Aju, who was originally silly and cute, now even her head froze. Seeing her like this, Baijuan did not stop. Instead, he reached out and pressed the back of her head. He opened his mouth and held her lips, kissing her very gently. The sunlight fell on Baijuan's body through the white cloth that was blown away by the breeze, coating him with a faint halo. The feeling of their lips touching was very soft, and there was a faint but pleasant smell. Aju felt as if she had been fed a piece of mint candy. It was cold. She should have been awake, but for some reason, her heart would contract slightly with the other party's movements. Baijuan did not deepen the kiss. Firstly, the location was not right. Secondly, he was afraid that he would scare away his Aju as soon as they met. That would not be worth the loss. Therefore, he only touched it gently. The tip of his tongue licked Aju's lips as if to comfort her. It was like a feather gently sliding past, making one's heart itch. It's really delicious. Baijuan pulled away from the two of them. His eyes flashed with gentleness, and the corners of his mouth could not help but reveal a smile. It was as if he was really evaluating the chocolate. Aju was in a daze. Her eyes were still looking at Baijuan's smiling face. He stood up and said, I'll go make you a cup of brown sugar water. Wait here obediently. Looking at that back, Aju subconsciously licked the place where Baijuan had kissed her. She did not know how to answer, so she could only vaguely say, yes. When she realized that she should ask the little brother why he was asking her, Baijuan had already handed the cup filled with brown sugar water to her lips. I just tried it. It's not hot. Some things had become a habit since she was young. For example, the things that Baijuan fed a Jew would reflexively eat them. As she drank the brown sugar water in Baijuan's hand with her round tiger eyes, she thought about why she always felt that the matter of kissing was deliberately turned over by the little brother just like that. However, a Jew did not dwell on this question for long. After all, when there was only the bottom of the brown sugar water left, she needed to hold Baijuan's hand with both hands and exert force. Baijuan had liked to watch a Jew do this since she was young. She was like a cat drinking water, and her fingertips were still on the cup. However, what he liked the most was that her hand would be placed on the back of his hand, and her body would also lean towards him. His Aju had not changed at all. Baijuan smiled again. Aju was still drinking the brown sugar water. When she saw him smile, her round eyes turned over. Baijuan took the cup away, and took 2 tissues to wipe the corner of her mouth. Don't drink at the end. Do you want to sleep? Hearing Baijuan say that he did not need to drink the bottom, Aju felt that the strength she used to hold the little brother's hand so tightly just now was a little wasted. She looked at the cup regretfully and shook her head. I'm not sleeping. If I sleep in the afternoon, I won't be able to sleep at night. Is that so? Baijuan raised his eyebrows with a faint smile. Then he placed his palm on the bed and lay on his side. He looked at Aju, and kept one hand free to touch Aju's head as if he was coaxing a child. He said in a low voice, Then rest with me for a while. I'm a little tired. If these words were heard by those problematic soldiers, they would definitely ridicule Baijuan collectively. A person who had been sleeping since yesterday, and only woke up today when he arrived at school, had no right to say that he was tired. Moreover, with Lord Bai's physical strength, he could still stand up and shoot remotely and fight in the jungle without sleeping for 3 days and 3 nights. How could a military king be tired so easily? It was clearly an excuse to flirt with a girl. Unfortunately, the person he was flirting with was none other than a Jew. Even though it could be seen that Baijuan was not sleepy at all, a Jew still nodded when she heard him say that he was tired. She was even worried that Baijuan would get cold, so she gave him half of the blanket. Thank you. Baijuan smiled. He looked very handsome when he looked at people from the side, especially when he was lying beside him, with such long legs. A Jew stared at him for a while. Then, she stretched out her finger and poked Baijuan's face. In a soft voice she said, Little brother. Hearing this name, Baijuan finally felt that his Aju had really returned. He stretched out his hand and pulled her over. His chin rubbed against Aju's furry head, and the corners of his eyes smiled. It feels different. Aju poked his chest again. Baijuan couldn't help but laugh. How is it different? It's much taller. Aju was a little depressed when she said this. She had already worked very hard to grow, but she didn't expect that little brother was even more hardworking than her in this aspect. Baijuan tilted his head and kissed the tip of her hair again. I ate a lot during training in the army, so I grew fast. Yes. Aju responded and wanted to poke him again. Baijuan's eyes darkened. He suddenly grabbed her wrist and brought her hand to a safe position. Aju looked at him in confusion. Baijuan could only sigh in his heart, but he still smiled. Does your stomach still hurt? Aju shook her head. But even so, Baijuan's palm still covered her small stomach. In the past, Aju felt that little brother's hand was different from hers. It was dry and warm. He clearly had a cold appearance. Where have you been these past few years? Although he had always vaguely known, Baijuan still wanted to hear his girl tell him personally. When he saw Aju again, he did not know how to describe his feelings. Just as Li Hailu had said, Aju had indeed grown up. Not to mention her appearance. Even her height was completely different from before. No one knew how he felt when he saw that young girl with a pair of tiger ears in the middle of the vast crowd. Including now, looking at this person at such a close distance, he would faintly feel a little unwilling. In a place that he could not see, his girl had a new change. And in these 3 years he was not involved. Even though he understood that there were some things that he could not do anything about, Baijuan still brooded about what she had done when he was not around. Sometimes, Aju would be a little talkative in front of Baijuan. Like a little hamster, she would tell him where she had been and what she had done. Bai Juan listened with a smile. He reached out and tucked her long hair behind his ear. His eyes fell on the pink heart that he had discovered long ago. "What is this?" "My roommate made it for me. She asked me to act cute and make the handsome instructor stay." Aju puffed up her cheeks and reached out to poke her left face. She wanted to rub away the heart that she had drawn earlier. However, Bai Juan stopped her. "It's very cute. It's indeed suitable for acting cute." However, did this also mean that if he did not come to military training for university this time, would Aju act cute to others? Chapter 1263. Her instructor would also become someone from the army, who came for military training. When he thought of this possibility, no matter how beautiful Bai Juan's smile was, his eyes were cold. He, who did not take the army who provoked them seriously, had the urge to torture them at this moment. Aju blinked her eyes in confusion. Why did she feel that her little brother seemed to be a little angry all of a sudden? Bai Juan was indeed angry, but his mood did not change that much. Moreover, he really liked that Aju had such a thing drawn on her face. It looked like a gift that had been sent to him, making his originally exquisite little face a little brighter. Perhaps he should change his words. When such a bonus peach heart was stuck to his face, it always made people want to kiss it. Bai Juan did not deliberately endure it. He approached her bit by bit, and naturally placed his lips on the peach heart on her left face. This kiss was not like the last one. He kissed her with his eyes closed. Aju could even feel her little brother's thick eyelashes sweeping across her face with his movements. It was soft, numb, and itchy. When his lips landed on the heart of the peach blossom, it was as if she had been electrocuted. Aju only felt her heart tremble. It was a very strange feeling. She was a little out of breath. She could only open her round black eyes in confusion. Bai Juan lowered his head to look at her and smiled gently. "Aju. Wipe the peach heart off when you go out later." "Wipe it off?" Aju touched the place where she had been kissed just now. "Didn't you say that it was very cute?" "Yes, it was cute." Bai Juan curled his lower lip. He did not say the rest of his words. It was so cute. Of course, he could not let others see it. Aju did not move. In the end, Bai Juan personally reached out his hand and used his fingertips to wipe the peach heart on her face bit by bit. Aju was obedient, but she was getting more and more confused about why her little brother did these things. Bai Juan raised his hand and looked at the time. He really wanted to lie down like this with Aju forever. However, this was not a good place after all. After a long time, the school doctor would also come in. Moreover, the students would be dismissed in a while. At that time, there would probably be a lot of people in the infirmary. "Does it still hurt?" Bai Juan asked Aju in a low voice. "If it doesn't hurt, we'll go back." Aju was no longer in pain. After hearing Bai Juan's words, she rolled over and stood up. Her speed was so fast that Bai Juan regretted asking that question. He should have waited a little longer before going out. Aju did not notice her little brother's regret. After tidying herself up, she stood by the bed and watched Bai Juan lower his head to tidy up the collar and cuffs that had just been crumpled. Bai Juan felt that it was not bad to be waited for like this. When he saw Aju standing there, he naturally stretched out his hand. Without thinking, Aju pulled him up from the bed with all her might. In the past, when they were in school, Bai Juan was always woken up by Aju like this. Xiao Lin and the others would always laugh at him when they saw it. However, in the 3 years that he had been away, he had been gone for a long time. But no one stood by his bed and waited for him. Not to mention pulling him out of the darkness like this. Bai Juan smiled lightly and swallowed the thing that surged out of his throat. Emotions were emotions, but rationality still had to be preserved. Therefore, before Bai Juan left, he did not forget to remind Aju. "Aju, remember, there is no good person in the army, so don't get too close to them, understand?" Aju heard this and thought for a moment before saying, "Little brother, you are also a soldier yourself." Bai Juan was speechless. He did not expect that there would be a day when Master Bai would set him up. However, Bai Juan only paused for a moment and quickly returned to his usual calmness. "Except for me," Aju smiled. There was a hint of black-bellied in it. Bai Juan also curled his lips. Is it very satisfying to laugh at little brother? No. Aju seemed to have thought of something when she said this. Then the instructor of our class. Of course it's me. Bai Juan's voice interrupted Aju's words very indifferently. How could he let someone other than himself be his girl's instructor? Aju smiled again. Little brother, the person they asked me to act cute and fight for is you. You saw me a long time ago. Bai Juan raised his eyebrows. It shouldn't be possible. They were so far away. Aju shook her head honestly. I can't see you. There are too many people in front of me. However, my roommates said that they want to fight for handsome men. I don't think any of those instructors can be more handsome than little brother. When Bai Juan heard this, even his footsteps stopped. Then he turned around, bent down, and lowered his voice beside her ear. Aju, I'm sorry. Aju only felt the warm breath hitting the tip of her ear again and again. It was so hot that it was unbelievable. The magnetic low voice sounded again. It was very pleasant to hear. Don't always say things that make me want to kiss you. Aju was stunned. Looking at that tall and straight back, she muttered in a low voice. Little brother really can't stand praise. I said that he is handsome, but he still wants to kiss me. However, she decided that she would praise little brother more in the future. Anyway, she liked little brother to kiss her very much. This way, there would be no sense of estrangement. Thinking of this, Aju raised her head and gave Bai Juan a big sweet smile. After all, Bai Juan did not have eyes on his back, so he could not see this scene. He only felt that his girl was getting more and more uncontrollable as she grew. Yes, this was not a good sign. At least not now. Bai Juan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he appeared in front of everyone again, he had already changed back to the cold and noble Colonel Bai. The problem soldiers pretended to train their students without blinking. In fact, their eyes were constantly looking in Bai Juan's direction. No, it should be said that they were looking in Aju's direction. After all, Master Bai's love interest was much more important than Master Bai himself. However, they really could not tell that this was the little monk in the photo. Although their eyes looked the same, and their facial features were also equally exquisite. But who would have thought that the monk would grow such long hair, and wear a pair of tiger ears on his head? They were really caught off guard. It turned out that Master Bai liked this type. To think that those military doctor beauties still wanted to be hotter. They had not understood Master Bai's taste at all. As if sensing their gazes, Aju raised her head and looked in their direction with a pair of majestic tiger eyes. The problem soldiers' backs trembled. Why did they feel that that was not the gaze of a cute girl at all? Why was there a hint of wanting to duel with someone in there? They must have seen wrongly. Chapter 1264. Bai Juan also looked in their direction. With just a casual glance, the problem soldiers immediately retracted their gazes obediently and began to correct the students' proper steps with a serious expression. It was completely impossible to tell that they were peeping just now. Destroying evidence was so fast. On the other hand, Vice Commander Zhang, who was closer to Bai Juan and the others, was immediately stunned when he saw Aju's appearance. Then he sneered again. No wonder this Bai Juan did not choose any other department, but chose the most unpopular archaeology department. So this was what was going on. With this thought in mind, his tone became a little strange. We have been training for more than an hour before Captain Bai came back. The students are all good students. Captain Bai, don't delay the progress of the class. When the time comes, we won't be able to score. Bai Juan raised his eyelids and did not say anything. The corners of his mouth curled up, but there was not the slightest bit of warmth. It was this attitude that made Vice Commander Zhang even angrier. It was as if he did not exist in the other party's eyes at all. He was just a wild soldier. What was there to be arrogant about? The students of the archaeology department also heard Vice Commander Zhang's words. They thought to themselves that the more this instructor looked down on them, the more outstanding they would be. With such a handsome and caring instructor in their class, what was the point of military training? Aju also sensed that person's hostility towards Bai Juan. Her round tiger eyes darkened. There was obviously something wrong with the way this person looked at her little brother. She wondered if she would be expelled from the school, if she hit an instructor in school. Seeing that she did not move, Bai Juan knew what she was thinking. He suddenly smiled. Aju. Here. Aju still understood the rules of the military in front of her classmates. After all, with her mother's relationship, she knew a lot of common sense in the military. Bai Juan smiled again and said, Return to the team. Yes. Aju trotted back to the class team. As soon as she stood still, her roommates began to praise her. Aju, your trick of self-injury was worth it. Aju was confused. What trick of self-injury? Her roommates did not say anything. They had an expression that said, Don't hide it anymore. We all understand. Tonight, we will treat you to a big meal to reward you. Aju still had no resistance to a big meal. She nodded her head cutely. However, some of the more insightful roommates noticed something. Aju, why are your lips red? Such a question made Aju immediately recall the scene when Bai Juan lowered his eyes and kissed her. His heart seemed to have skipped a beat. It was clearly a very normal greeting in the past. Could it be that she felt different because she had grown up? It was sweet and bitter at the same time, as if something was pounding on his chest. It was not easy for her to stabilize a little. Then someone asked, Aju, why is the heart on your face gone? Aju paused. Her face felt as if it was on fire. Did you rub it off somewhere? That person sighed regretfully at first, then laughed. Forget it. We've achieved our goal anyway. Quick, tell us, how does it feel to be hugged by a handsome guy? You don't know. But when the instructor bent down to hug you just now, the entire field exploded. The people from the performing arts department were like fools looking at us. They probably thought that the instructor would definitely choose them this time. But they didn't expect that they would still stay in our archaeology department in the end. Aju, you are a great contributor to our department. You have helped our department hold our heads high. There was a reason why the students said that. In University A, the performing arts department had always looked down on the girls from the other departments, especially the archaeology department. In their eyes, none of the girls from the archaeology department were presentable. However, for some reason this year, there was a student who skipped a grade, Bailey Jiao. As a new student, Lu Zidong, who had always been praised by others, did not like to be robbed of her limelight like this. The performing arts department had always been different from the other departments. Only when one was famous enough in the school could they become the focus of the media. Lu Zitong's family background was not bad, and her piano playing was also very good. She had already been signed by a management company before she entered the school, so she was also very popular in the school. Originally, she should have been the one to shine, but now that her popularity was overshadowed by others, of course she would feel uncomfortable in her heart. Moreover, that instructor. Lu Zidong glanced in Bai Juan's direction and bit her lip heavily. She was clearly the one who had taken a fancy to him first. On the first day of military training, the two departments already had a faint feeling of enmity. Under normal circumstances, the training would not be too strict at the beginning. Usually, they would first plan their walking and standing postures, and let the students familiarize themselves with the slogans. Therefore, for the entire afternoon, the entire field was filled with people shouting, "Turn left, march in unison 121,121. Compared to the other instructors, Bai Juan's voice was not loud. On the contrary, it always gave people a cold and indifferent feeling. However, it was this kind of attitude that seemed to be more convincing to the crowd. There were two girls in the archaeology department who had uncoordinated limbs, and were always in the same place. Bai Juan did not let them stand out alone to practice like the other instructors. It had to be said that the fact that a Jew had once been ostracized had a great impact on Bai Juan. Therefore, after Bai Juan became an adult, he understood how easy it was for girls at this age to be hurt in their hearts. He still let them stay in the team, and walked to the side of the two people. He straightened his slender legs and walked with them. With such a standard, the students walked even more orderly, especially the two female students, who had been led back and forth by Bai Juan 8 or 9 times, were no longer easy to follow. One of them was a Ji's roommate. When she sat on the grass to rest, she said very seriously, "I feel that our instructor is different from other men. In short, he is too handsome. Not only his face, but his heart is also handsome." Aju also saw what had happened just now. She nodded her furry head in agreement. Little brother had always been so handsome, since he was young. Look, even little Aju, whose boyfriend's strength is off the charts, has nodded. You have to know that previously, when Aju looked at those boys who tried to woo her, they were all. The roommate was still looking for adjectives. Another person silently finished for her. God's contempt. Yes, yes. The roommate was very excited. Aju directly broke their fantasy. That's because their strength is not as good as mine. The instructor's strength is greater than yours. The roommate bumped into her. Aju was stunned. Her round tiger eyes were cute and adorable. I haven't competed before, so I don't know. She didn't fight with little brother, so there was never a winner or loser. The roommates laughed together and reached out to rub Aju's head. They liked it very much. This child is taking the joke seriously again. Chapter 1265. Alright, the break is over. Everyone gather. It was Vice Commander Zhang from the department next door who was growling. He looked like an officer, and was very firm when he gave orders. In comparison, Bai Zhuan just stood there with a tall and slender body. He casually clapped his hands, and the students of the archaeology department immediately stood up and formed a square team in minutes. That's about all for today's training. After dinner, I'll go to your dormitory. Before Bai Zhuan could finish his words, he only heard the word dormitory. The girls screamed. It wasn't just the archaeology department. Even the other teams were in the same situation. The soldiers were a little awkward. They coughed lightly and said, "It's to teach you how to fold your quilts." At 7:30 p.m., the instructors will knock on the door on time. Girls, be careful. Boys, hide all the smelly socks. That's it. Dismissed. In fact, these people had never entered the girls' dormitory before. In the past, when they had not entered the army, although they could play freely, they were all in nightclubs. They were both willing. Moreover, they had a bottom line and would not play too much. Therefore, until now, the members of the problem corps were still very pure inside. The girls turned their heads and began to whisper. Their expressions were shy, embarrassed, and a little excited. Their feelings were very complicated. The archaeology department had already stopped talking. Their eyes looked at Bai Zhuan, as if to confirm if what he said was true. Bai Zhuan's voice was very indifferent. You all heard it. Clean up the room and dismiss. As soon as he said this, there was a complete uproar. The roommates pulled Aju over and were quite excited. Aju, did you hear that? The instructor is going to our dormitory. Yes. Aju replied and lowered her head. She was looking at the military jacket around her waist. In order to prevent her pants from getting dirty, the little brother had helped her put it on. When was she going to return it? Just as she was thinking about this, she saw that the roommates beside her seemed to be stunned for some reason. Aju raised her head and followed their gaze. It was Bai Zhuan, who had just said that they were dismissed, walking towards them. The roommates immediately held Aju's hand tightly and stuttered, "See, instructor." Bai Zhuan smiled at them, but his gaze was on Aju. His voice was very low. Hailu will also be there for dinner tonight. Do you want to call your dormitory members to join us? I'll ask them. Aju did not expect that her little brother would invite her to dinner. However, the fact that Li Hailu was also here made her very happy. Her tiger eyes looked to the side. His roommates were dumbfounded. If they didn't hear wrongly, the instructor was inviting them to have a meal together. No, that's not the main point. From the instructor's tone, it seemed that it was very likely that he was an old acquaintance of Aju. Big sis, are you going? Aju was the youngest in the dormitory and ranked 4th. She reached out and tugged at the sleeve of one of her roommates. The girl suddenly came back to her senses and nodded vigorously. Then she realized that she was being too unreserved. She chuckled and said, "Go." Of course she had to go. He was such a handsome instructor. And the few behind him were also very handsome. What should I do when I feel like I'm surrounded by handsome guys? The main point was that they clearly smelled the scent of JQ on the instructor and Aju. They had to watch. However, Bai Zhuan's calm attitude seemed to have never minded that they were watching. On the other hand, Aju thought of something. Will it have a bad effect on you if you take us to eat like this? After all, the little brother was now a soldier and their instructor. It's not against the discipline to eat in the school cafeteria after class. Bai Juan's thin lips curled up. He reached out and touched Aju's head. Then he asked in a low voice, "How's your stomach? Do you want to buy some hot milk to drink first?" Hearing this, the few roommates who were single felt that their eyes were about to be blinded. Such a natural JQ was definitely not something that could be done in a day or two. "Aju, tell us the truth. When did you get to know our instructor?" He even started to show off his love without a care. Bai Juan really did not care what others would think of him, and he did not care about the impact. Those who were familiar with him knew that what he was doing now was to let everyone in the school know that Aju was his. The people from the problem core watched from the side and shook their heads repeatedly. Shameless, too shameless. In front of the entire school, the matter of inviting her to a meal was simply mastered by bluntly telling others that he had a close relationship with the little monk. Otherwise, with Master Bai's watertight style of doing things, he would definitely not mention the matter of a meal in front of so many people. He would definitely find a time to meet someone in private. Moreover, when did they have a meal together? There was clearly no such item. It was simply added at the last minute. Using in a blatant manner. When the problem core walked over, they looked at Bai Juan with a pitiful and resentful gaze. Facing such gazes, Bai Juan only said one sentence in an indifferent voice. "Do you want to eat?" Of course, eating with a girl was better than looking at Master Bai's face every day. He was so handsome that it seriously affected their self-esteem, causing them to lose their appetite. Go! How could they not cherish such a good opportunity to get to know Auntie Bai? At the dining table they had to ask properly. What stage were the two of them at? Li Heila's class was far from here. He was the last to come. He was also a person who did not care what others thought. He came up and messed up Aju's hair. Originally, he had already made the gesture of carrying Aju up. Bai Juan turned sideways and slapped his hand away. "Hailu, this is a school. Be careful of your influence." Li Hailu was speechless. Who was the person who carried Aju up just now? Now he was telling him to be careful of his influence. As expected, men who were jealous were all unreasonable. Li Hailu spoke to Aju through Bai Juan. "Aju, just tell me. Do you miss me?" Aju nodded heavily. Yes. One word actually made Li Heila's eyes a little bitter. It turned out that she had never blamed him. In fact, Li Hailu also knew that a child like his Aju rarely blamed others. She had been like this since she was young. However, hearing it with his own ears was still different. How much did he regret being young and ignorant back then? He could not see through people, causing 3 years of separation. Now that he had grown up, he would not make the mistakes of his childhood again. At this moment, Li Hailu finally understood what Master Bai meant when he always said that the time was not right. Aju stretched out her claws, wanting to hug Li Hailu as well. Bai Juan, who was originally standing between the two of them, saw this and moved to the side without leaving a trace. Li Hailu smiled lightly and bent down. He hugged Aju for a while and quickly let go. After all, Master Bai's tolerance had always been directed at Aju. Chapter 1266. The students on the field had not finished walking yet. Even Vice Captain Zhang and the others narrowed their eyes when they saw this scene. The people from the Performing Arts Department were whispering to each other. "Did you see that? Those instructors seemed to know the people from the Archaeology Department. I was wondering why the instructor didn't choose any class, but chose their class. So that's what happened. His family helped him take care of them. Even so, the instructor is too good to that Bailey Jiao. Zidong, what do you think?" Lu Zidong glanced over there. Her expression was obviously very ugly, and her voice was a little cold. "It's nothing to rely on his family's connections." "That's right." The person next to her echoed Lu Zidong's words. "If it's a competition of connections, who can compete with our department? Zidong, ask your father to call the principal and ask the instructor to take care of our class more. It would be best if they could change the instructor for them." Lu Zidong also had this thought, but she didn't say it out loud. She just sank into deep thought and glanced in the direction of Bai Juan and Aju. The people on Vice Captain Zhang's side walked over and complained in a low voice. Vice Captain, when are we going to teach those wild soldiers a lesson? I really can't stand what they've done. It's obvious that they're tarnishing our reputation as soldiers. The instructor is not allowed to get too close to the students. This is the rule. However, when I went to ask the captain just now, the captain said that it's not a violation of the rules to eat together in the school cafeteria. Those people don't look like good people at first glance. They're so sloppy after class. I don't know which unit took them in. Don't worry. Vice Captain Zhang sneered. Sooner or later, we'll let them know what they're made of. As dusk fell, most of the students on the field had left. However, the cafeteria became exceptionally lively. The aroma of food and rice continued to float out from inside. Aju and the others wanted stir-fried food. They sat on the third floor. Other than the boiled fish, which was meat, the rest of the dishes were vegetarian. When the dishes were served, Baijuan deliberately asked someone to place the boiled fish farthest away from Aju. He naturally took Aju's bowl, picked up some vegetables for her, and poured some juice on the rice. After mixing it back and forth with a small spoon, he handed the bowl back to Aju. Aju did not say anything. She lowered her head and took a big bite. She ate very well, and her small face was bulging. Both of their movements were very smooth, as if this was how they usually ate. The people who saw it were a little dumbfounded. This was especially true for the problematic armies. They really couldn't believe that the gentle and patient person in front of them was their master Bai. That Major Bai, the jade-faced king of hell who made them wish they were dead? When had he ever picked up food for a woman? And he was still mixing the rice. Eat slowly. Baijuan did not eat it himself. He turned his face to the side and looked at Aju beside him. He supported his chin with one hand and curled his lips into a smile. Then he used another hand to wipe her mouth. Even his eyes were filled with obvious affection. The problem legions were speechless. They simply couldn't eat this meal. Unlike them, Aju's three roommates' eyes were full of vigor and gossip the entire time. How did Instructor Bai and Aju meet? Is it a family relationship? Someone could not help but ask. Hearing this, Baijuan smiled and placed his hand on the back of Aju's chair. He just watched her eat. No, we've known each other since we were young. I raised Aju. Her roommates were speechless. What kind of answer was this? Instructor Bai's words were very difficult to understand, and he never explained much. Her roommates also felt it. This person's eyes would only soften when he looked at Aju. When he looked at others, his eyes were cold. For some reason, although Instructor Bai was very polite to them from the beginning to the end, and even had a smile on his face, these three roommates were inexplicably a little shocked by Instructor Bai's aura. They did not dare to ask anything more. They could only turn their heads to look at Aju, who was still chewing on the rice grains. Aju raised her head. Her beautiful tiger eyes flashed like a clear lake. I was indeed raised by little brother. Little brother started to adopt me when he was 9 years old. Adoption? Her roommates were shocked again. Adopting someone else at the age of 9? After hearing this answer, the roommates felt that Baijuan really could not be looked at with ordinary eyes. Then you two can be considered childhood sweethearts? Baijuan raised his eyebrows. Probably because he heard the words he liked. His thin lips curled up very beautifully. Yes. Her roommates were all silent when they saw this. What kind of adoption was this? It was clearly raising her. After she grew up, she would be eaten. Originally, as older sisters, they should have reminded Aju. After all, Aju was obviously very weak in front of Instructor Bai. However, looking at Instructor Bai's appearance, they really did not dare to say anything. The soldiers patted their own heads regretfully. Why didn't I think of adopting a child when I was young? When she grows up, she can be a wife. Master Bai's trick is too deep. Li Hailu glanced at them. Don't talk about when you were young. Now that you look at a child, don't you have a headache? Headache? The soldiers were very self-aware. We can't raise children. But the books say that brothers with younger sisters are usually very gentle. Why don't I feel Master Bai's gentleness? Li Hailu agreed and joined the collective crusade. Baijuan slowly picked up a piece of vegetable for Aju. Then, he wiped his hands and said to them, "Because you are not my younger sisters, I don't need to be gentle to you. Also in the future, read less books that affect intelligence. Was he mocking their low IQ? Even if Master Bai mocked someone, he had to attack from the side. It made those people unable to open their mouths. They were very sullen. In the end, the soldiers directly focused their gazes on a Jew. Sister-in-law, don't you think that there's something wrong with Master Bai's words? To be honest, sister-in-law, you should control Master Bai. If he's always like this, it's very easy for him to lose friends. A Jew was instantly stunned when she heard these words. It was not because of these words, but because of that name. Sister-in-law. When the roommates heard these two words, they were no longer calm. The one who had just eaten the chicken almost choked. This was really shocking. How did they think of using the name sister-in-law? Were all people from the army like this? A few people could be considered to have good eyesight. When they saw this situation, they were surprised. Isn't it? Bai Juan swept his gaze over them and said in a cold voice, "Eat your food." Chapter 1267. So it was really not. The eyes of the soldiers lit up. This situation made them even more excited than Master, by confirming their relationship. Because if it was not confirmed, they could still see Master by chasing after someone with their own eyes. This was something they had never thought of before. A Jew was still biting the food in her bowl. She looked cute, and they did not know what to say on such an occasion. Bai Juan had already reached out and touched the tuft of hair on her head. It was soft and comfortable to the touch. Eat more. There are other training at night. A Jew swallowed the food and nodded obediently. On the other hand, her roommates wanted to know the training content. Other than folding the quilt, is there anything else? Li Hailu smiled and said, running and standing in military posture. I will also give you a big backpack, so that you can be ready for an emergency assembly at any time. Emergency assembly? When is it? They could still prepare in advance. Bai Juan only said 2 words, not sure. Her roommates were speechless. A Jew, you have indeed changed to control your little brother. It was really easy for him to lose friends when he spoke like this. However, even if Instructor Bai's face was a little black-bellied, it was still hard for people to hate him. What should they do? You didn't tell us the assembly time, because you were afraid that it would be unfair to the other classes. After a Jew said this, she added, if we don't know the assembly time, we can still win. When the time comes, I will drag you out of the dormitory. The roommates thought about the situation of being dragged by a Jew, and immediately waved their hands. A Jew blinked and said seriously, I'm very good at dragging people. We know. Her roommates were unusually determined. No need, a Jew. Just call us when you get up. All right. A Jew, who was rejected, still felt a little regretful. After all, other than the day of school, she had never dragged anyone else. Li Hailu knew what was going on. He gave a thumbs up to the 3 girls. He really could not let a Jew drag people. It was like dragging a sack. Her image would be ruined. The 3 girls tacitly cupped their hands at Li Hailu. They looked like they were all experienced people. A Jew blinked again, and turned her head to continue eating the food that the little brother had picked up for her. However, Bai Juan put down his bamboo chopsticks and picked up her wrist. His gaze landed on the weight buckle. Then, he turned his face to the side as if he was going to untie it for her. A Jew's eyes were round. You can't take it off. If you take it off, you won't be able to control your strength and hit others. Later you will be with me, and there will be no one else. As Bai Juan spoke, he untied the gravity buckle and threw it on the table. The roommates did not know what it was, but the few people from the problem core looked at that thing and stopped eating one after another. The way they looked at a Jew changed. Had she always been wearing a gravity buckle? Wearing it during meals and training? This was simply stronger than their endurance. For some reason, he felt like he had been outdone. They were the nation's sharpest blade. They couldn't lose to a girl just like that. Sister-in-law, that. A Jew, come, how about arm wrestling? Hearing this, a Jew immediately sat up straight with an eager look on her face. However, Bai Juan directly held her right hand and said in a calm voice, if you want to arm wrestle, you can either wear gloves or find someone else. So the main point was, Master Bai didn't want them to hold sister-in-law's hand. Isn't Master Bai a little too possessive? The people from the problem core turned to whisper to Li Hailu. Li Hailu also lowered his voice. He has always been like this. Back then, Shaolin had given Aju some gifts, but he could also throw them all back in the blink of an eye. All of Bai Juan's emotional fluctuations were used on Aju, whether it was good or bad. The problem core still did not dare to provoke Bai Juan. After hearing Li Hailu's words, they silently withdrew their hands. Aju was still seriously asking for a fight. It's not convenient in the canteen today. We'll fight after the military training is over. A girl had already asked them to fight like this, so of course they had to agree. Okay. Bai Juan actually did not stop them. Instead, he smiled meaningfully. When they really fought in the future, the problem core finally knew what Bai Juan was smiling about at that time. The four of them could not even defeat a little girl. They were even dizzy from the fall. They had lost all their face. As expected, one could not judge a book by its cover. In the future, they would not dare to casually fight with girls anymore. What kind of girl was gentle and lovely? Fairy tales were all lies. Of course, that was what happened after the military training. Therefore, those people were still planning how to show mercy to Aju and force Bai Juan to come out of the mountain. Just like that, the meal was eaten with great relish. After eating, the roommates still wanted to continue gossiping with Aju. Unexpectedly, Bai Juan stood up in advance. He was still holding Aju's hand. His voice was very gentle. I still have to take Aju to a place. She can only go back later. I'll have to trouble you guys in the dormitory. It's not hard. The lethality of Bai Juan's handsome man trick could be seen from the reactions of those girls. The roommates put their palms together and watched the two of them leave. They thought to themselves, Aju, it's not that we don't want to deal with you. It's just that your little brother is too handsome and has too much aura. Go ahead. Even if you get eaten, it's worth it. Aju was held by Bai Juan's hand the whole way. Around 6 o'clock, the students were all in the cafeteria or dormitory. There were very few people walking on the boulevard at this time. Fortunately, this was the case. Otherwise, there would definitely be many people watching. Aju was not afraid of being looked at by others. Although university was much more free than high school, she still did not want Bai Juan to be affected in any bad way. After passing through the school boulevard, they were outside the school. Little brother, where are we going? My house. It turned out that before they came back, Bai Juan had bought a duplex building next to University A. Needless to say, everyone knew why. The house was very clean and new. The glass cups hanging upside down were transparent and shiny. It could be seen that even its owner had not been here many times. The Bai family had a lot of properties. However, this house was different. It did not belong to the Bai family. It only belonged to Bai Juan. This was what Bai Juan had envisioned for the future in the past. When he was young, he had thought of buying a house that belonged to him. There was only him and his Aju in it. Whatever Aju wanted, he would buy for her. As for how young he was when he was young, it was probably when he was around 10 years old. Therefore, Master Bai was really very possessive since he was young. Chapter 1268. I'm going to boil some hot water. You go to the bed and lie down for a while. The room on the left is the bedroom, Bai Juan said as he patted Aju's head again. Aju knew that he wanted her to be obedient. Anyway, she had always been obedient. Without the gravity cuff on her wrist, she would not move around casually. However, wasn't it not good to go to the bedroom as soon as she came? Aju still wanted to say something, but Bai Juan had already gone into the kitchen and started to light the fire. She was still wearing his military uniform, and there was a faint smell, which was slightly fragrant. It did not smell very refreshing, but it faintly revealed a pleasant and refreshing feeling, which made people particularly calm and tranquil. Forget it. If the little brother wanted her to go, she would go. Lying on the bed was more comfortable. As Aju thought about it, she pushed open the bedroom door with the white cat on her head. Other than some men's products like cigarette boxes, there was also a very big Alaskan Malamute, which was glaring at the person who came. Woof woof woof. Why did Master bring a woman back? This doesn't make sense. She must have bad intentions towards Master. Let's see how it will scare her away. Helpless, before Alaskan Malamute could use its deterrence, a Jew recognized it at a glance and directly pounced on it. Little Allah, I didn't expect you to become so big. The originally majestic Alaskan Malamute's neck was about to be broken. What little Allah? He was so mighty and strong. Was the reputation of the country's first army dog for nothing? Wait a minute. Why did this scene look so familiar? And this woman's strength? Woof woof woof. Alaskan Malamute seemed to have suddenly thought of something, and barked even more loudly. Master, save me. Hey, you're bullying a Jew again. Baijuan appeared by the door with a tall and straight figure. He held a cup of hot tea in his hand and spoke in disapproval. Alaskan Malamute. Master, who is bullying who? Can't you see that I'm about to die? A Jew was still stroking the dog's head with all her might. Alaskan Malamute was already lying there exhausted, and began to stick out its tongue. Baijuan saw that a Jew was almost done playing, so he walked over and handed the hot tea to her. There's longan in it. Take a small sip when you drink it. The water is still hot. Yes. A Jew nodded and took it. Her other hand was pulled over by Baijuan, and she sat on the side of the bed. Her stomach warmed up in a second. She lowered her head and saw that her little brother had given her a warm water bottle. Baijuan turned his face to the side and naturally placed his palm on the hot water bag. When he saw that a Jew was looking at him, he smiled and turned to kiss the child's eyes. A Jew was stunned again. She felt that this time, her little brother seemed to like kissing her a lot. In the past, she could still kiss him back, but now, she could only feel her heart beating faster and faster, her face heating up, and the corners of her eyes turning red. There was a shyness in her eyes that she did not even realize. Seeing her like this, Baijuan's eyes darkened. He kissed her again with that strength, but this time, the position of his thin lips changed, landing behind her reddened ear. A Jew trembled as well. An indescribable feeling spread from her tailbone to her entire body. In the past, when her little brother kissed her, his forehead, eyes, and mouth seemed to be greeting her. But he had never kissed her like this before. A Jew widened her eyes at a loss. What greeted her was a pleasant smell, and his hot breath by her ear. A Jew. Then he laughed in a low and deep voice. As expected, it's better for others not to be around. A Jew's mind was already a little muddled. When she was hugged by him like when she was young, she realized how much she missed such an embrace. At that time, her little brother was sitting on the sofa reading a book, while she was sitting on his lap and eating. He was clearly such a clean person, but he never talked about her eating. Was it only when they were separated once that she would occasionally think of the scenes that she had neglected? A Jew lowered her head and held Baijuan's hand. Baijuan paused for a moment and kissed the top of her head with a smile. Sleep with me for a while. A Jew nodded first, then raised her eyes and asked seriously, Is there enough time? Little brother still has to go for our military training at 7:30. There's still time. Baijuan hugged her and turned sideways, letting her look at the watch on her wrist. It's 6:05. You can sleep for at least an hour. If that was the case, there was nothing to worry about. However, for some reason, her heart still felt like it was trembling, especially when her nose was filled with the smell of her little brother. Her entire body seemed to be soft. In order to prevent Baijuan from seeing through her abnormality, a Jew simply closed her eyes. It would not be so abnormal if she fell asleep. Baijuan looked at her fair little face. First, he used his fingertips to wipe the dirt on a Jew's face. Then, he covered the hot water bag for her with one hand, and hugged her with the other to lean against the headboard of the bed. To him, a Jew was still too young. She was 16 years old, but in reality, she was only 15.5 years old. He did not want to scare her. Even though there was a part of her body that was already very uncomfortable, her breathing was still a little heavy. After the person in his arms really fell asleep, Baijuan touched her cheek. His Jew had returned to his side. This feeling was really good. The sun shone in from outside the window, and everywhere was warm. Baijuan had forgotten how long it had been since he had experienced such leisure. In fact, the person who could not leave the other party had always been him. It was not a Jew. Alaska was locked outside the door, but it did not dare to scratch the door. It had an expression, as if it had seen a ghost. Originally, in the past few years, the little Hercules had not appeared, so its mistress would be replaced. Now it seemed that its master had taken it in back, then just to give the little Hercules a wrestling toy. Tricks full of tricks. Where was the sincerity? Woof! Alaska lay on the ground in despair. When it saw the white cat walking towards it, its back quivered, and with a whoosh, it crawled into the dog hole. Its tail was exposed, and its big head trembled as it hugged it with its paws in shock. It refused to show its head again no matter what. The white cat walked past it and glanced at it. There was a hint of contempt in its eyes. This was the scene that Bai Zhuan saw when he came out. He only raised his eyebrows and did not say anything as he directly walked into the bathroom. His dog was so scared by a cat that it was trembling like a little chick. Alaska. Master, you are not moved by such a scene. Are you still human? Pa, the bathroom door opened again. It turned out that it was Bai Zhuan who had walked out to get a towel. In the future, when you see a Jew, don't come up and hug her. Alaska. You are even jealous of a dog. Master, you are simply immoral. Chapter 1269. On this side, Bai Zhuan was still educating his military dog. On the other side, there were already people staring at him. Other than Vice Captain Zhang, there was also Lu Zitong. The rich young lady held a phone in her hand and said impolitely to the other side of the phone, "Let my father answer the phone." The secretary was a good secretary. He was very professional. Even though he was treated so impolitely, his expression did not turn ugly. He only turned his head and handed the phone to a man in a suit. "President Liu, it's a call from Mississippi." The man was still at the dining table. He was also a powerful person. When he heard that it was a call from his daughter, he immediately picked up the phone. "Zidong, what's wrong? Is it because you're not used to the food in school?" "It has nothing to do with the food." Lu Zidong's tone softened when she was in front of her father. "Dad, can you tell the school to change the instructor for our class?" The man was stunned. "Change the instructor? The instructor from the archaeology department is much better than our current instructor. He's also handsome." Lu Zitong lowered her voice as she spoke. "I want to gain popularity on Weibo now. Only when the instructor is good-looking can there be a topic." The man laughed again and didn't care at all. "I thought it was something serious. They are all the instructors of the same school, so it shouldn't matter which class they take. I'll talk to the school about this matter." "It's useless to talk to the school." Lu Zitong anxiously paced her feet. "Dad, the professor said that this is an internal decision of the instructors. Help me contact Uncle Li and ask him to give the order. I've asked around. These instructors are all from the army. His words are useful." The man was amused again. You really have a lot of ideas. All right, I'm eating with your Uncle Li now. The matter of the instructor is not difficult. We'll go over tomorrow afternoon. Who do you want to be your instructor? Just point it out when the time comes." "Okay." Hearing this answer, Lu Zitong's eyes lit up. After hanging up, her eyes narrowed, and a cold smile appeared on her face. Her limelight was not something that anyone could snatch away just because they wanted to. Thinking of this, she called her agency again and told her agent to think of a topic first. When she bought the trending topic the day after tomorrow, she would be able to catch up with a wave of Weibo headlines. The weather outside gradually cooled down. When a Jew woke up again, there was no one beside her. The warm water bag on her stomach was still warm. When she sat up, 2 strands of hair stood up on her head. A Jew stretched out her hand and tried her best to press it down twice. She could not press it down, so she could only stand up first. She was still holding the hot water bag in her hand. She looked around the living room, but she did not find Bai Zhuan, so she followed the sound of water and entered the bathroom. As soon as he opened the door, he saw something he shouldn't have seen. Bai Zhuan seemed to have just taken a shower. His lower body was only wearing a pair of military pants with a black belt tied around it. His upper body was not wearing anything at all, revealing his alluring waistline and well-defined chest. His Apollo's belt could be seen clearly, and even the black mark on the side of his waist could be seen clearly. The toughness and sharpness of a soldier could be seen clearly. There was still water vapor on his body. His head was covered with a pure white towel, and his wet black hair made him look even more out of place in this secular world. His face was handsome. Aju paused for a moment. It was as if there was a small drum hammer beating in her chest. She directly closed her eyes. Like a little monk, her small mouth kept moving. Only when he got closer did he realize that she was chanting Buddhist scriptures. Emptiness is form. Form is emptiness, she muttered like a little hamster. Bai Juan was amused by her reaction. A trace of light flashed across his eyes. He was not in a hurry to put on his shirt. He just pulled her over and trapped her at the sink. What are you chanting by yourself? Aju did not have time to react. As soon as she opened her eyes, her gaze met that pair of incomparably deep peach blossom eyes. The black and white were distinct, hazy and seductive. Moving further down, it was that very seductive chest. Aju's face and neck were also red. Her reaction was direct and simple. Go and put on your clothes first. Hearing Aju's words, Bai Juan could not help but smile. Aju, do you want to touch it? Aju shook her head directly. What a joke. She now knew that men and women were different. She could not touch it casually. Even if she wanted to, she could not touch it. Bai Juan was too bad. He actually used a handsome man trick on her. Fortunately, she studied Buddhism and had good willpower. Otherwise, her cultivation would be ruined. But would Bai Juan listen to her refusal? Of course not. He directly pressed her hand on his chest, and the corners of his mouth curled up. How is it? At that moment, the unique warmth and dryness of a boy was like steel, jumping in her palm with thumping sounds. That kind of skin was completely opposite to her softness. Only then did Aju truly understand what a man was. Man. She did not know why, but whenever she thought of this word, it was as if something was about to emerge from her heart. However, at this time, Bai Juan still lowered his eyes. His thin lips were less than 3 centimeters away from her ear, so when he chuckled, even his breathing would follow. Aju inexplicably felt that the skin that her palm touched was a little hot. She wanted to retract her hand, but was pressed back by Bai Juan. Do you know how to fold a tofu quilt? Seeing that Bai Juan had mentioned something that she cared about, Aju shook her head. She could not do things with edges and corners. She only knew how to wrap the quilt into a ball. She had been like this since she was young. During this military training, it was impossible for her to lower the average score of the class because of the quilt. There are many things to pay attention to when folding a quilt. Bai Juan smiled. Sometimes it's not that you fold it wrong, but that the quilt itself is too old. But it doesn't matter. This is just the beginning. I can tutor you alone. Aju was stunned. You can tutor me in folding a quilt? Can't you tutor me at home? Bai Juan's fingers brushed the ends of her hair. We don't have much time today. Alright, go wash your face first. We'll talk about this tomorrow. Did that mean that she was coming tomorrow too? Aju looked at herself in the mirror and thought of the scene she had seen just now. Her face was a little red, and the heat in her palm could not dissipate no matter what. Even though she was washing it with cold water, it seemed that there was still that different touch. Bai Juan did not go out. Instead, he picked up the military training uniform beside him and put it on. Then he turned his head and wrapped his hands around Aju's back. He directly held her hands. Don't you know how to use hand soap to wash your hands? With such a posture, and the difference in height between the two of them, it was basically Aju being hugged by Bai Juan. Aju raised her head. She could only see that pure white chin and handsome side profile. Her breathing stopped for half a beat. Chapter 1270. It was always difficult to have a person behind you, even if this person was the closest to you. However, such an action far exceeded the word close. Aju did not know what to say. She felt that her fingers on her back, wherever they touched Bai Juan, were all numb. The two people's faces were reflected in the mirror at the same time. Even their postures were very clear. The sound of water flowing rang in their ears. His slender and fair fingers wrapped around the other pair of hands. Just like that, his face was as handsome as jade. This was a scene that would make anyone envious. Li Hailu was right. All of Bai Juan's emotions were used on Aju: happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy, forbearance, possession, as well as infinite patience and gentleness. Many people said that being happy every day was not love. It was just pure liking. Love was like this. He wished he could rub her into his bone marrow. But he was also afraid that he would hurt her a little. He doted on her like a child. But he could not do anything to her. Bai Juan took a deep breath, and then pushed her away. His eyes were still smiling. Wash yourself. Remember to apply hand soap. Aju was very obedient. She muttered, I always know how to apply hand soap. She just did not know what had happened to her little brother all of a sudden. All of a sudden, his breathing seemed to have become especially heavy. Could it be that he had caught a cold? Aju tilted her head in confusion. In the end, she decided not to think about it. She would wait for the night to properly practice how to fold the quilt. Bai Juan, who had closed the door, stood there with his slender figure. His back was against the wooden door. His black hair was still wet. It fell down just like that, making it impossible to see his expression clearly. Alaska seemed to have sensed the danger coming from its master. Just as it was about to run, Bai Juan pressed its head down. When Aju came out, this was the scene she saw. Little brother? Have you washed your face? Bai Juan did not look at her. Aju nodded and said, It's all cleaned up. We can go now. Only then did Bai Juan raise his eyes. His deep voice was a little hoarse. My tolerance is indeed not very good. Aju was dumbfounded. How did they get to this topic? Let's go. Bai Juan walked over and let the cute Aju out of the house. He had originally planned to come once a day, but now he decided to change it from once a day to twice a day. Since his patience was not good, he should extend the time he spent alone. Aju still didn't know that Bai Juan already had plans to let her come over to stay at night from tomorrow onwards. She was still thinking about how to maintain her composure. The Buddha had once said, as a qualified abbot of a temple, one must have the determination to reject beauty. The twilight was slowly fading. It was 7:30 p.m., the most important time in every dormitory. All the instructors appeared in front of the dormitory on time and walked from one dormitory to another. Every time they entered a dormitory, they would take a student's blanket and let them see how to press and fold it. However, most of the female students were already drunk when they saw Bai Juan's face. As for how Bai Juan folded the quilt, was that important? Bai Juan also saw that these students were absent-minded. He curled his thin lips and stood up. Start folding now. If you don't fold well, go downstairs and run 10 laps. The number of laps completely woke the female students up. Although Instructor Bai had a decent appearance and had an outstanding temperament, he was not someone to be trifled with. However, he was very good at scolding people. 10 laps. It was definitely not a joke. Even though they had only interacted with him for a day, they could sense that Instructor Bai was not a person who would show mercy to the fairer sex. In other words, whatever he said, he would usually do it. No one dared to step on Bai Juan's bottom line. They immediately had goosebumps and began to move their hands and feet. At that time, they did not know why they were so afraid of Instructor Bai. Later on, reality proved that their fear was completely correct, because there were a few instructors who seemed to be very afraid of Instructor Bai. It was strange. Shouldn't these people be soldiers of the same level? However, to be honest, Instructor Bai's aura was too shocking. He just stood by the door, wearing white gloves, with his hands crossed in front of his chest. When he looked at people with a faint smile, it also made people feel suffocated. Why did they only think that he was handsome at that time, and not realize that he was so inhuman? There's still 1 minute. If you can't fold it well, you'll have to run. Bai Juan raised his eyes and looked outside. You probably don't want to go down like this in your pajamas. After all, the school street lights are so bright. It won't be good if you're accidentally watched by your seniors, who like you without makeup. The female students were speechless. This had simply hit their soft spot. How did Instructor Bai think of such an inhumane punishment method? Aju also felt that her little brother's method was too black-bellied, but the effect was still surprisingly good. Rows of angular quilts looked like they had completely won the other major departments. Although there were still many shortcomings, on the whole they were excellent. Vice Commander Zhang, also looked at the results of the examination. His eyes narrowed again and again. It was obvious that he was not convinced. He raised his hand and looked at the watch on his wrist. It's 9 o'clock now. The camouflage uniforms have been sent to you. I'm sure you've all heard that there will be an emergency assembly tonight. The quality of the assembly will affect the final military training score. In other words, this is the question of the score. Remember what I said. Set an alarm clock at 11 o'clock. Without a doubt, this last sentence revealed the exact time. The students of the performance department looked at each other. Originally, they were not interested in the final score of this kind of military training, but they did not want to be suppressed by any department. Especially after so many years, they had always been more outstanding than the archaeology department. Of course, they had to be first in everything they did. The school would be especially quiet at night. After 10 o'clock, everyone slept very soundly. However, the instructors did not sleep. They were all dressed in straight military uniforms. They stood outside the dormitory and raised their hands to look at the watches on their wrists. Professor Liang was also there. He wanted to do this emergency assembly to let the students know what iron-like discipline was. After all, the school's inheritance was there. Time's up. Blow the whistle. Professor Liang leaned on his walking stick and said. The whistle for the emergency assembly resounded throughout the entire dormitory building. Fortunately, in University A, the first-year dormitory building was separated from the second-year and third-year dormitory building, so that side would not be affected much. A Jew was the first to wake up. Just like an ancient cultivation expert, she immediately flipped down from the top bunk and landed on the ground silently. While putting on her military uniform, she shook her roommate awake. Second sister, get up quickly. It's time to gather outside. What do you mean? I'm about to kiss my yang. What did you say? Gather. Chapter 1271. This fancy low cry caused the dormitory to be in a mess in minutes. Everyone was looking for their military pants and coats. Their hair was casually tied up and tied into a ponytail with their hands. In order to be faster, they did not even care about their image. A Jew was holding a coat in her left hand, a coat in her right hand, and a few military hats. The roommates put on their coats as they walked. They patted a Jew's shoulder, meaning that it was all thanks to her for waking up the sisters. A Jew's actions were indeed very dazzling. They did not know where she learned that wind and fire wheel-like technique. In short, she had helped a lot. Every dormitory had basically become a pot of porridge. Only the performing arts department smiled at each other and began to run out of the dormitory. Each of them was dressed very neatly, and their hair was combed very neatly. Even the buttons of their military uniforms were buttoned meticulously. A Jew's speed was already very fast, but when she came down, she found that the performing arts department's team had almost taken shape. There was still chaos in front of the dormitory building. The sound of going downstairs still echoed in the stairwell. Everyone was afraid of wasting even a little time, but when they all came down, they found that the others had already gathered. How did they get here so fast? The roommates looked at a Jew in surprise. They were not students from the performing arts department. The main reason was that there were really a few people over there who would not go downstairs without putting on makeup. It was a waste of time to put on makeup. How did they get downstairs so quickly? A Jew's round tiger eyes also glanced at the performing arts department. The students from the performing arts department stood straight, and even their faces had smiles of disdain for being with them. Vice Captain Zhang looked at the square team that had gathered on his side and took the lead to walk out. He whistled, "Attention!" Whoosh! Every student puffed out their chests. Vice Captain Zhang ran toward Professor Liang and gave a military salute. Performing Arts Department, gathering is complete. Good, good, good. Professor Liang said 3 good words in a row. It was enough to see how happy he was. The problem corps looked at the time on their watches and frowned. Although such a gathering speed was still considered slow for them, but it was impossible for this group of university students. 2 minutes was not even enough time to put on clothes, right? Why did the Performing Arts Department gather so quickly? Lord Bai, there's something fishy about this. The soldiers came over and said to Bai Juan, "That Vice Captain Zhang is obviously up to no good. Why is there such a person in the army?" Bai Juan's voice was very indifferent. "Don't worry about the other troops. Don't forget, we are still on vacation. Are we not going to teach him a lesson? Such obvious cheating? The students and professors may not be able to detect it, but we are all aware of it." Bai Juan smiled again, his eyes a little cold. "Yun Hu, I said not to bother about the other troops. I didn't say that I wouldn't clean them up. A soldier has to act like a soldier. If we don't clean them up, we will lose face." When the person named Yun Hu heard Bai Juan's words, his eyes lit up, and he returned to his original position. Anyway, Master Bai had already said so. Sooner or later, Vice Captain Zhang would be defeated. They just had to wait and see. Bai Juan took a step forward. His military boots landed on the ground, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. He was not looking at his own team, but at Vice Captain Zhang's side. He chuckled softly, and only the two of them could hear him. The gathering was so sudden. "The female students under you actually had time to put on makeup? Vice Captain Zhang, who do you think you are, a fool? Such an unfair comparison should not appear in the army. If it appears, it can only mean one thing. You are not worthy of being a soldier." When he heard the last sentence, the vice captain surnamed Zhang clenched his hands tightly. He also lowered his voice. "It's just a field army without a number. How dare you judge whether I am worthy of being a soldier? If you have time, go home and watch more TV. You will know what kind of existence our army is. You can see the shadow of our army everywhere. No matter how dangerous the disaster area is, we will go to support it. It is not something that a three-legged cat like you, who has never experienced anything, can understand." When Bai Juan heard this, he raised his eyes to look at him again. "I don't need you to tell me how good the army is. It's just that the one who went to the disaster area to provide support was not you, but your senior. Don't expect your senior to plant a tree for your junior to take shelter. You are not worthy of this honor." Vice Captain Zhang was stunned by Bai Juan's words. He did not expect this person to know so much about the army. He had indeed not gone to provide any support. There were so many people in the army, and not everyone needed to go. The army itself had to leave some people behind. He did not think that there was anything wrong with him being a reserve army. Vice Captain Zhang had found so many excuses for himself, but he was unwilling to admit that when the mission was not given, he would shrink back. This shrinking back was pointed out by a recruit who was even newer than him. The fire in Vice Captain Zhang's heart burned even more fiercely, and he looked at Bai Juan more and more displeasing to the eye. "What do you know about honor? Captain Bai, don't think that just because your military rank is one rank higher than mine, you can really order me around. We are from the army. What about you? Until now, you still don't dare to say the number of your army. Isn't it because you are afraid of being laughed at? Let me give you a piece of advice. You are still young and haven't experienced anything. Don't pretend to be someone big. You are not qualified to talk about honor in front of me." After saying this, Vice Captain Zhang raised his leg and walked towards his battle camp. When the two recruits saw this, they came over and asked him, "Vice Captain, what did that guy surnamed Bai say to you just now?" Seeing that the students in our class gathered so quickly, he was jealous. Vice Captain Zhang snorted coldly. The recruit laughed when he heard this. This is only the beginning, and he is already jealous? The face-slapping matter is still to come. Tomorrow, the higher-ups will come to check. The shooting competition will start early. When the competition is over, I reckon that he won't have the face to continue with the military training here. He is so arrogant, but in fact he is just an embroidered pillow. Just wait to be tortured. Vice Captain Zhang did not think much of it. However, if the shooting competition was brought forward, it would be the best for him. It would save that guy surnamed Bai from being cold and indifferent in front of him. He even looked like he did not put him in his eyes. Compared to Vice Captain Zhang's indignation, Bai Juan, who should really be angry, was not angry. Instead, his thin lips curled up, and his pair of peach blossom eyes looked brighter than ever. It was so bright that it made the soldiers around him shiver in unison. Chapter 1272. I'm very satisfied with the speed of the students. Professor Liang did not notice the commotion below and said with a smile, "Tomorrow afternoon, there will be a leader coming to our school for an inspection. Students, please show your energy today." According to the usual practice of previous years, the results of the competition will be counted into the total score. Whichever faculty wins will get the rewards they deserve. Military training is to let students show the passion that young people should have. Alright, it's late now. Everyone should go to bed early. There's still a tough battle to fight tomorrow. Professor Liang was indeed a soldier. What kind of competition became a war in his mouth? Every instructor arrived in front of their respective class. The students of the archaeology department were still puzzled. They were more or less dejected. "Instructor, we tried our best to buy time, but we didn't expect that we were still a step too slow." Aju listened and did not say anything. Her big eyes looked at the instructor of the performance department again. This person looked at her little brother and really deserved a beating. Buddha Woolley had said that one could not casually make a move. If one wanted to make a move, one had to find a proper reason. Aju was more or less a little depressed. When would there be a proper reason? Bai Zhuan looked at the students in front of him. His voice was neither indifferent nor indifferent. "Didn't Professor Liang say that tomorrow is the main event? It's just that you're a little slower than others. The points can be recovered sooner or later. What's the rush? Go back to sleep." Did this mean that he would leave the victory and defeat to him? The students did not understand. Didn't they say that their instructor was a recruit? No matter how strong Instructor Bai's aura was, it could not be compared to the army, right? They were more or less worried. However, Bai Zhuan had a unique persuasiveness, so the students still obediently disbanded on the spot and went upstairs. Except for Aju. She asked Bai Zhuan very seriously, "Little brother, can I beat up the instructor?" Bai Zhuan paused for a moment and then laughed. "Who do you want to beat up?" "The one who was talking to you just now." Aju looked a little valiant in her military uniform. Bai Zhuan stretched out his hand and straightened her military cap. "He's not worth it. Besides, if you want to be a host, shouldn't you cultivate your character?" Hearing this, Aju's cheeks also puffed up. "Last time, Master also said that my temperament wasn't enough. He even said that I shouldn't beat people up casually. He was afraid that others wouldn't be able to withstand my fist." Bai Zhuan was speechless. His master's worry was very reasonable. However, when did you see Master? Aju brushed her hair. "Just a while ago. I went to the mountain and said that I wanted to inherit his legacy. He chased me down and gave me 2 steamed buns. He said that I was deceiving my master and destroying my ancestors." Li Hailu coughed softly at the side. "Aju, your master hasn't passed away yet, and you're going to inherit his legacy. If this isn't deceiving the master and destroying the ancestors, then what is? From the looks of it, Master doesn't intend to hand over the temple to me." Aju kicked the stone under her feet. "I'm going to wait for another 4 years. If he still doesn't agree after I finish college, I'll go up the mountain and snatch it." Hearing this, Li Hailu was completely silent. He looked in Bai Zhuan's direction. It was almost as if he was saying, "Are you not going to do anything about it?" Unexpectedly, Bai Zhuan only laughed softly. "When the time comes, I will help you." "Yes." Aju looked very happy. Li Hailu was speechless. "Your master raised a pair of disciples like you. He probably won't be able to live a peaceful life for the rest of his life. He only took a gun with one hand. Today we'll talk about shooting." Ordinary students would not be able to come into contact with shooting during military training. However, university it was different. They had it every year. This was also the training that the students looked forward to the most. After all, everyone had a desire to hold a gun in their hearts, regardless of whether it was a boy or a girl. However, when they really came into contact with a gun, they realized that that thing was simply too heavy. The army did not provide many guns. There were only 3 guns in each class, and there were no bullets in them at all. They let them take turns to hold them and learn the posture first. Chapter 1273. Huff huff, I can't take it anymore. This gun is so heavy. How did instructor Bai pick it up with one hand? You shouldn't ask instructor Bai how to pick it up. You should ask a Jew how she can carry one in one hand, and still do it properly. Even the boys can't do it. Willie, a Jew is better than the boys at anything. She's just so manly. A Jew's actions had indeed stunned many people. Bai Juan was afraid that it would dampen the enthusiasm of the male students in the class. So he took the gun from a Jew's hand, and gave her a mission to buy water for the entire class. Of course, other than the fact that a Jew was too capable, Bai Juan did not want her to lie on the ground and learn the shooting posture that she already knew when she was not feeling well. Bai Juan was a sniper. One look at a Jew's actions, and he knew that she had learned it before. When she was young, Bai Juan had never taught her how to hold a gun. Now it seemed that it was her family who had taught her. Her technique was very experienced. Such a person would be top-notch even in the army. His Jew had really changed a lot when he was not around. Little brother, should we distribute the water now? A Jew raised her delicate little face. Even though she was wearing a military uniform, she still gave people a silly and cute feeling. It was probably because the 2 strands of hair on her head could not be suppressed no matter how hard she tried. Bai Juan looked at her, and the corners of his mouth curled up. Distribute it all. You can't drink it. I brought you a thermos with red dates in it. Go and drink the water in my thermos. Because a Jew had just exercised, her small face was flushed red. She obediently nodded and wanted to run. The students had all dispersed to rest. All their attention was on the mineral water. Seeing this, Bai Juan turned sideways and pulled a Jew back. He lowered his voice and asked, "How's the packing?" "What is it?" A Jew was a little puzzled. Bai Juan reminded her, "The things in the dormitory. It's all packed." When a Jew spoke, she was still trying her best to suppress the hair on her head. Bai Juan held it in for a long time, before he did not hug such a cute girl into his arms. He said in a hoarse voice, "After the training ends, I have a meeting here. Someone will pick you up then. I'll go there myself." A Jew felt that it would be inconvenient to send another person. Anyway, that place was close to the school. Bai Juan also did not want anyone other than a Jew to enter his apartment. He paused and took out a bunch of keys from his pocket. "If there's any problem, call me." "All right." When a Jew took the key, Li Hailu happened to pass by this place. He walked back and forth twice. When a Jew picked up the thermos and started to drink water, Li Hailu directly put his hand on Bai Juan's shoulder. "Master Bai, I wanted to ask you yesterday. You want to kidnap a Jew to live with you so much. Are you trying to hide her?" Originally, he thought that it would take some time for him to admit it. Unexpectedly, Bai Juan only glanced at him indifferently and said, "Yes, so this place is very inconvenient for you to visit." After Li Hailu heard Bai Juan's words, he realized that he was the one who was tricked in the end. This also meant that he couldn't find an excuse to go to that house in the future. If he had known earlier, he would have called Shaolin. A person like him who did not know how to use idioms should have consulted the Ministry of Foreign Affairs first. What a mistake! At this moment the bell rang. It was noon, and it was time for the teachers and students to go to eat. Because there were people coming from above, the instructors all had other places to go, so they did not appear in the cafeteria on the 2nd floor like yesterday. Professor Liang personally received the group of people. When Vice Captain Zhang and the others saw the people who came, they all respectfully saluted. The soldiers stood at the back of the team and looked at each other. They did not say anything, but the meaning in their eyes was basically understood. "Who is this?" "I don't know. It seems like he has a big background. He doesn't even have as many ears as Master Bai. Is this a big background? If he really had a big background, I would have seen him at my mother's place long ago. Don't forget what she is in charge of. In my mother's heart, Master Bai is the most important. Your mother likes Master Bai so much that she almost married you to him." "That won't do. I'm a man." "You still know that you're a man." Bai Juan was the leader. Even if the people who came were not in line with them, they still had to show respect. Seeing that the few troublesome people kept shaking their heads, their eyes directly swept over. The soldiers left and stood up straight. They no longer exchanged glances. In any case, they were under old Zhao's protection. They were not afraid of officials. At most, when they did something bad, they would leave old Zhao's name behind. Achoo! President Zhao, who had countless ears on his shoulder, sneezed heavily. He was still commanding the battle when he suddenly felt a chill on his back. He pulled the adjutant beside him over. How are those bastards in school? The adjutant was also a little stunned by the sudden question. They should be fine. Good is good, bad is bad. What do you mean they should be fine? President Zhao was very angry. The adjutant comforted him. President, don't worry. Master Bai is the person who is about to take over your position. No one can bully them. Do you think I'm worried that they will be bullied? President Zhao scratched his prickly head. I keep feeling that something is not right. The army has already informed them that they will be the ones going over, right? The adjutant paused for a moment. Master Bai and the others' identities have always been very special. They can't reveal their numbers, right? So you don't know. Yes, it's good that you don't know. President Zhao thought for a moment and stood up again. Good my ass. Without that identity, these bastards are even more reckless. The adjutant continued to comfort him. It's okay, President. At most, they can still say that they came out from under you. President Zhao was speechless. Everyone sit down. Don't stand. Everyone sit down so that you won't be reserved. At the school's reception desk, the man in military uniform came to speak. He pressed his palm down. Vice Captain Zhang seemed to be very obedient to him. As soon as he opened his mouth, the few soldiers on the other side all sat down. Their movements were very orderly, which made Bai Zhuan and the others seem a little slow. There were a total of 6 people in the problem army. Other than Bai Zhuan, 3 of them came from Sharp Blade, and 2 of them were about to enter Sharp Blade. They were all people who had carried out many secret missions. To be honest, other than the orders of Bai Zhuan and some important leaders, they rarely listened to anyone, which was why their reaction was a little slow. Vice Captain Zhang snorted mockingly, thinking that they were new recruits who had not seen much of the world. Chapter 1274. The dishes were all served, and the people who came did not do anything special. The dishes on the table were all from the staff cafeteria. Professor Liang also took the walking stick beside him. He sat there and raised the wine glass in his hand. They exchanged pleasantries happily and harmoniously. After a while, Li Yanfeng smiled again. I heard that the students from the Performing Arts Department are all doing well in this military training. Which instructor is leading them? When Vice Captain Zhang saw that he had been called out, he first looked at Bai Zhuan and the others proudly. Then, he stood up and saluted the people at the table. Good, good. Li Yanfeng seemed to be very happy. He tilted his head and asked his good friend beside him. Not bad. Let Tong Tong come in first, and let her take a good look at her. That child usually keeps a low profile, and doesn't want the students in the school to know her identity. Lu Xianan thought that his daughter was a worry-free person, but he didn't know how she behaved outside. Li Yanfeng heard this and glanced at the soldier beside him. Go and bring in the little girl waiting outside the door. Tell her that Uncle Li and her father want to see her. Professor Liang knew Lu Zitong's identity. He chuckled and said, President Lu is here to see his daughter today. As a parent, I'm always worried. Lu Xianan raised his wine glass and clinked it with Professor Liang. Vice Captain Zhang listened at the side, but his expression changed a little. Long before he came to the military training, he had heard that the students of university might be able to meet someone with a strong background by chance. He was also familiar with the name Lu Zitong. She was an influential figure in his team. He didn't look like an ordinary university student, but he didn't expect her family background to be so good. The more Vice Captain Zhang thought about it, the happier he became. Lu Zitong was in his class. Just this relationship alone was of great help to him. The soldiers all acted as if they did not hear him. They lowered their heads and ate the rice in their bowls. Their eating manners were also different. Some of them were especially forthright, displaying the energy of a soldier to the fullest. Some of them were like rich young masters who were sloppy. Of course, there was also someone like Bai Zhuan. No matter what he ate, it made people feel like he was eating a French meal. Even his fingertips were filled with bone-chilling elegance. This was the scene that Lu Zidong saw when she came in. Her bright eyes looked at Bai Juan reluctantly. Anyone could tell what she meant. Li Hailu sat at the side and frowned heavily. The problem armies were even more stunned. What was going on? Did she take a fancy to their Lord Bai? Wasn't this courting death? Master Bai had a wife. Although his wife was a little monk, she was still an adorable little monk. Master Bai would not give any woman other than his wife any face. It was even crueler than the cold wind sweeping the fallen leaves. Lu Xian coughed heavily when he saw his daughter staring at an officer. Only then did Lu Zitong turn around with a smile. She said graciously, "Dad, Uncle Li, Professor Liang. Sit down," Li Yanfeng said to Lu Zitong. "Your dad was just saying that you don't eat well." They were relatives to begin with. In addition, the two families had supported each other for so many years, so of course they were close. Lu Zidong glanced in Bai Juan's direction and said, "Uncle Li, I won't sit. You adults are talking about time. As a student, I'm breaking the rules by sitting here. Moreover, the instructors are still sitting over there. You've grown up and know the rules." Li Yanfeng smiled and raised his hand again. "Vice Captain Zhang, come over here for a moment." Vice Captain Zhang immediately put down his chopsticks and walked over when he saw that his regiment commander was calling him. "You've trained people well. Change places with that instructor just now and lead them." Li Yanfeng's words were beautiful. After hearing this sentence, Vice Captain Zhang was completely dumbfounded. Change places? What did he mean? Let him go to the archaeology department? He was just happy that Lu Zitong was in their class, but now he was transferred to another department. Vice Captain Zhang's eyes widened as he followed Li Yanfeng's gaze. When he saw that the person he was talking about was none other than Bai Juan, the fire in his heart burned even more fiercely. However, the order was given by his superior, so he had no choice but to obey. He only looked in Bai Juan's direction with bloodshot eyes and gritted his teeth. He did not say yes or no. From the moment Lu Zitong came in, Li Yanfeng had already guessed which instructor she wanted to change. However, it was inevitable that such a thing would have a bad effect if a girl said it, so it was better for him to say it directly. As expected, after Lu Zitong heard Li Yanfeng's words, she looked at Bai Juan's godlike noble and handsome face. Her cheeks turned even redder, and there was a faint hint of shyness. Vice Captain Zhang also saw what was going on. Of course, he would not question anything in front of everyone. He clenched his fists, lowered his head and said, "Yes." A voice slowly sounded from the other side. It was neither cold nor indifferent, but it was a little like an ancient sword being unsheathed. It carried a slight vibration. "The military training will last for 10 days. The class has been set since the beginning. Changing people halfway will only affect the students' emotions. Commander Li is now proposing to exchange officers. Is it because of a military order, or because of personal reasons?" The last sentence made Li Yanfeng feel a little embarrassed. He only opened his mouth and laughed. "Whose soldier is this? Not bad. He dares to speak." The officers looked at each other. In the end, the captain reported in a low voice, "Commander Li, they are not from our army." "Not from the army?" Then they were the few people who suddenly appeared out of nowhere. When Li Yanfeng thought of this, he was stunned for a moment. He still could not figure out the identity of the other party. But when the chief picked up the phone, he was also present. He saw that the chief was very respectful to the person on the phone, so it could be seen that one or two of them were involved. Lu Zidong saw that he was hesitating and called out in a low voice, "Uncle Li." Lu Xian saw that Li Yanfeng was in a difficult position, so he interrupted his daughter. "Zitong, if there's nothing else, you should go and eat first. You still have military training in a while. Your Uncle Li and the others still have serious matters to discuss." "Dad!" Lu Zidong still wanted to say something. Lu Xian lowered his voice. "Go quickly." When Lu Zidong heard this, her expression turned ugly. Only then did she reluctantly raise her feet and walk out of the door. She had never thought that even Uncle Li would not make her wish come true. Before she came, she had already made an agreement with the people in the dormitory that this time, she would definitely let Bai Juan be their instructor. now that things had turned out like this. And when she saw that Bai Juan did not even look at her, Lu Zidong only felt that she had been slapped in the face in public. She felt indescribably uncomfortable. She had already done this, but why did that instructor Bai still look at her, as if she did not exist? Chapter 1275. In the hall, the atmosphere had yet to recover. Li Yanfeng and Bai Juan looked at each other. Only then did they feel that those long and narrow black eyes looked somewhat familiar. But for a moment, he forgot where he had seen them before. Where exactly were they? Bai Juan did not give him time to see clearly. He just sat back down, holding the wooden chopsticks in his hand. He looked calm as if nothing had happened just now. Vice Captain Zhang thought to himself that it was fine if this person was usually arrogant, but he was still so arrogant in front of Commander Li. He was really stupid as a soldier. It was good that Bai Juan did not change. Whichever class had Lu Zidong, the results of that class would not be too bad. The most important thing was not the results, but being noticed by the higher-ups. Vice Captain Zhang had a lot of thoughts, but no matter how much he thought, he could not hide the embarrassment in his heart. The matter that Commander Li had mentioned just now was simply an insult to him. Even if he stayed in the current class, it was as if Bai Juan had given it to him. What was this? He was being bullied by a random soldier from God knows where. The more Vice Captain Zhang thought about it, the gloomier his face became. His eyes were full of gunpowder as he looked at Bai Juan. How could Li Yanfeng not see the undercurrent below? He quickly restrained his thoughts and laughed. I heard from your captain that there is a shooting competition in the afternoon. President Liu, and I won't be leaving today. You guys have to perform well, and not embarrass our army. Yes. When Vice Captain Zhang said this word, it was obvious that he used a lot of strength. There were a few people from the army who did not like Bai Juan and the others. At this moment, they were all looking in their direction. For no reason, there was an additional sense of provocation. The problem soldiers, on the other hand, did not think much of it. It was not a team competition. With only Master Bai around, they did not need to appear at all. One had to know that Master Bai's code name was Viper. Hiding, attacking, and not missing a bullet. Vice Captain, eat more. Show them what you're capable of later. Someone picked up some food into Vice Captain Zhang's bowl with his chopsticks. It was as if they had already won. Vice Captain Zhang was even more immodest. He sneered. It's time to let them know what they're capable of. The meal was not eaten very quickly. After all, there were still people sitting on the table. Especially with Professor Liang around, it was inevitable that they would say a few words. There was a long lunch break at a university. The moment Lu Zidong entered the dormitory, someone asked her, Zidong, how's the situation? Is it because our instructor has changed? Uncle Li didn't agree. After Lu Zidong finished speaking, she added, he said that Vice Commander Zhang is a good soldier in their army. With him leading us, we can get a high score in the final round. Also, there will be a shooting competition in the afternoon. The students and instructors will participate. How long have we been holding guns? How many points have we scored? The key to winning or losing will depend on the instructors. Vice Commander Zhang is famous in the army for shooting. With him, we have already won. After I heard that, I decided not to change the instructor. If I were to change Vice Captain Zhang to the archaeology department, when they win, wouldn't they go to the heavens? After hearing Lu Zitong's explanation, her roommates also felt that it was reasonable. However, they said, I really want to take a closer look at Instructor Bai. I always feel that he is particularly handsome even when he walks. Alright, now is not the time to be infatuated. How can military training compare to being able to suppress those people from the archaeology department all the time? Someone said, look at them. Now that there's a good-looking person over there, they're starting to show off. On the forum, they even said that the grade skipper is better looking than Zidong. At this point, that person also noticed that Lu Zidong was around and immediately changed his words. How can she be compared to Zidong, right? Yes, it's just because Instructor Bai is in the limelight. Another roommate immediately said, just wait. This time we'll suppress the archaeology department. No one will talk nonsense anymore. Lu Zitong was obviously unhappy. If it was just that she couldn't get a person, it wouldn't be a big deal. She was going to be a superstar in the future. What she needed the most now was popularity in all aspects. Although it was rare to see someone as classy as Bai Xuan in the entertainment industry, she still knew what to do. However, it was fine if Instructor Bai ignored her, but he had to pay extra attention to that grade skipper. This kind of differential treatment not only stole her limelight, but also made Lu Zitong jealous. Since Instructor Bai didn't want to bring them along, then let him and the archaeology department lose face together. With Uncle Li around, the extra points in this shooting competition would definitely belong to them. At that time, they could also change the original trending topic on Weibo. That grade skipper. They would let her get away as far as possible. Aju didn't take the competition in the afternoon seriously. With little brother around, would they lose? Obviously not. Moreover, to be honest, even if little brother wasn't around, they wouldn't lose. Aju looked at her hands. With a force, all the luggage was carried into the house by her. Little Alaska was still excited when it heard the lock, thinking that it was its master. However, when it saw Aju's shadow, it immediately exploded and directly drilled into its kennel. Its speed was like a bullet that had left a gun. Aju raised her eyebrows and brought the box in. Just as she tidied up the things, she received Bai Xuan's WeChat message. Have you arrived? Aju saw that it was in the form of text. After thinking for a while, she felt that it was definitely inconvenient for him to speak. She also used text to reply, I'm here. When little Allah saw me, it buried its head in the kennel. No matter how I called it, it wouldn't come out. Bai Xuan was almost done eating. After looking at the WeChat message, he immediately thought of why his beloved dog was like this. Aju asked seriously, does it not like me living here? After all, dogs and cats are territorial. Bai Xuan looked at the last sentence, and calmly replied with a few words, it's shy. Shy. When Aju saw this answer, she smiled happily. She dragged little Alaska out, and rubbed its head with all her might. So you're shy. If little brother didn't say it, I wouldn't have known. Don't be shy. I'll live here from now on. Little Alaska almost spat out a mouthful of dog blood. Master, is it really okay for you to lie through your teeth like this? Do you really not know why I didn't come out? You actually want this Hercules to live here from now on? Woof, there's no way to live in the future. Aju thought for a moment, and took a photo of herself and the dog. She directly sent it to Bai Xuan. It was pulled out by me. It shouldn't be shy anymore, right? Bai Xuan glanced at his beloved dog, who seemed to have exhausted all its strength. He curled his lips and smiled. Then he lowered his head and replied. Chapter 1276. Yes, I'm not shy anymore. These 5 words were very calm and unhurried. She did not feel ashamed at all. Alaska was speechless. Master, I really didn't expect you to be such a master. Don't bully us dogs for being illiterate. After Aju saw that reply, she held the dog's face and rubbed it hard. Alaska was no longer in the mood to say anything. It stretched out its paws and cosplayed as a bear. Aju squatted beside it. Seeing that it seemed to be hungry, she quickly mixed a plate of dog food for Alaska. Then she filled it with water from the basin beside it. In the end, Alaska was satisfied with the food and began to rub against the ground. To be honest, other than being a little stronger, Hercules was very domestic in other aspects. Compared to the women it had seen before who only had eyes for its master, she was much better. Little Allah, if you're thirsty, drink the water over there. Also, you can't eat the dog food casually. When little brother and I come back in the afternoon, we'll bring you ham sausages. Aju instructed Alaska as she went to change her shoes. When Alaska heard the words ham sausages, its ears pricked up. One had to know that although its master was a good master, he was very careless when it came to food. They had been raised in the army, and had already developed a rough stomach. It was fine as long as they had something to eat. Only when it barked at the ham sausages would its master be merciful, and buy it 1 or 2. In the army, there were canned foods to eat, but it personally preferred ham sausages. Aju knew that it wanted to eat just by looking at it. She smiled and rubbed its dog face again. Wait for it. We'll be back after training. At this moment, Alaska was both painful and happy. It was still good to have a mistress at home. In the future, it would not have to eat those dry food with its master anymore. Baijuan indeed did not care about food. In the past, he was such a noble young master in the military. After going to the army, he did not say a word about eating a cold pot of rice. At that time, Chief Zhao was surprised for a long time. In the end, he silently watched him swallow the dry rice grains one by one. He knew that this kid had a great future. He was flexible and did not want to be special. He was not only like the Bai family, but also like the Tang family. After all, if he asked to heat up the rice with his status, this request would not be too much. When Baijuan entered the army, the old man did not say anything, but his heart was half happy and half sad. He no longer had a son, so how could he bear to let his only grandson go to the border again? It was not that old master Bai had not thought of retreating. As long as Baijuan said no, he could immediately use his connections to get him to come back. However, from the beginning to the end, Baijuan's patience and responsibility had already exceeded the imagination of too many people. One call a year. In the content of the call, other than hearing him tell him to take care of his body, old master Bai was also inquiring about a Jew. In the first year, Baijuan was seriously injured, and the border was very cold. Old master Bai had also asked, "Why don't you come back first?" There was silence on the other side of the phone for a while before a voice came through. "Grandpa, I'm needed here." The word grandfather made old master Bai's eyes turn red. At that time, Baijuan was only 18 years old. 18 years old at this age was originally the most youthful, brilliant, carefree age. However, Baijuan carried too much on his back. Moreover, I can't run away at the last minute. Only when I become strong enough can I protect the people I want to protect, without any scruples. Grandfather is old, and a Jew is still young. With just a few words, old master Bai knew that he had changed his grandson's mind. As a soldier, Baijuan was very qualified. It was precisely because he was too qualified that old master Bai felt guilty towards him. However, such a person could not tell the whole world what he had done. This was because the mission they carried out was too confidential. He could not say who he had protected. He could not say where he had gone. He could not say what had happened to the injuries on his body. Baijuan had too many secrets. He had thought about it countless times. Fortunately, he had met a Jew. For soldiers like them, some of them were seriously injured and could not continue. They could only find a girl when they retreated. They had to give the girl a sense of trust and security. However, there were so many things that could not be said, which caused some unhappiness. Even his family had to be hidden from him. Baijuan had seen his comrades who had gone on blind dates in his hometown. Sometimes his blind date did not even know that the blood flowing in his body might have once saved this country. He would only ask if he had a house in the school district. Of course, this was only a part of it. Baijuan was not cynical. He was just grateful that he had met such a person since he was young. No matter what you become, no matter how long you disappear, she will not change. She will only wait for you in the same place. Thinking of this, Baijuan lowered his head and looked at the WeChat photo on his phone. The corners of his mouth could not help but curve up. Vice Captain Zhang caught his smile and snorted disdainfully. "Just you wait. You won't be able to smile in the afternoon." His voice was lowered, but the provocation was real. When the soldiers beside him heard this, they all wanted to throw down their bowls and chopsticks, stand up, and teach him a lesson on the spot. Baijuan blocked with his arm, his expression very calm. The soldiers looked at each other. Even though their chests were heaving up and down, they were very obedient and immediately sat back down in their original positions. Damn it, this Zhang guy was simply asking for a beating. Master Bai was not around, so they did not care about the military rules. They would beat him up first. Anyway, even if he caused trouble, his father would block it. The reason why Chief Zhao could not leave Baijuan was also because of the temperament of this group of ancestors. The soldiers were good soldiers. They were not afraid of death, and they were also obedient enough. It was just that sometimes they were like Tibetan mastiffs, biting whoever they caught. Other than Baijuan, no one could tame them. Li Yanfeng and Professor Liang also noticed the commotion here. They put down their cups and looked over. What's going on? The person who asked was Li Yanfeng. Vice Captain Zhang stood up and said, "Reporting, the people on Captain Bai's side can't wait any longer. They want to have a good shooting competition with our army." Hearing this, Li Yanfeng laughed. He pointed at them and said to Professor Liang, "When I was young, I was just like them. If there was a competition in this army, I would definitely be full of vigor and not give in to anyone." Professor Liang also smiled. "The army needs people with vigor. It's about time. Tell them to go down and prepare. Change their clothes and bring their guns. Tell all the classes to gather." Li Yanfeng also raised his hand to look at the time on his watch. The lunch break was indeed over. He said to the people below, "Go, don't embarrass us soldiers." Yes. As soon as Vice Captain Zhang raised his hand, he gave a smug look to the soldiers. However, what he did not expect was that the group of people actually laughed at this time. They sat casually in their seats and laughed casually, as if they did not take him seriously at all. Chapter 1277. Bai Zhuan took the military cap beside him and stood up as well. He only said the word "go" to the few people behind him. The soldiers were not worried now. The shooting competition was about to begin, so what were they worried about? All of them left wearing military caps. As soon as the assembly signal sounded, each class formed rows of square teams as quickly as possible. The students were all wearing camouflage uniforms. Regardless of whether they were boys or girls, they all looked as if they already had the toughness that they should have. A Jew was also standing in the middle of the team. Her waist-length black hair was tied into a ponytail by her. There was no gravity buckle on her wrist. Instead, she was wearing a black wristband. She had an indescribable handsomeness. Everyone should have heard that we have a competition today. Bai Zhuan faced the square team of their class and stood tall and straight. A shooting competition. All the students knew this, but no one expected it to come so soon. "Instructor Bai, we can't even hold our guns properly. The performance department started a day earlier than us. It seems that since yesterday, their instructor has let them touch guns. What should we do now? There are more girls in our department than in theirs this year. It's probably going to be difficult." Bai Zhuan listened to the students' worries, but the expression on his face did not change at all. On the other side, Li Yanfeng and the others had already walked over. They were all leaders, so they specially came down to take a look. Lu Xianen was also there. He was wearing a suit, which was enough to see his business aura. When he walked to the performance department, he paused and looked at Lu Zitong. Lu Zitong was originally standing in the front row. She was not tall, but because she was good-looking, people ignored the problem of her height. Li Yanfeng also stopped and specially adjusted Lu Zitong's military cap. He laughed loudly and said, "Perform well, understand?" "Yes, Uncle Li." Lu Zitong's entire face lit up at this moment. What was the big deal about being rejected in the cafeteria just now? Looking at it now, all the teachers and students in the school still had to look at her in amazement. "Oh, you." Lu Xianen reminded her again. "Don't embarrass your Uncle Li." Lu Zitong smiled and said, "I got it. Dad, you'd better leave quickly." Lu Xianen shook his head and turned his face to say a few words to Professor Liang. After the group of them left, the performing arts department blew up. "Zidong, that's the commander of the army. You know him? His background is too strong." Lu Zitong smiled reservedly, enjoying the envious looks from all around her. She didn't say anything, but just this scene alone made the performing arts department feel even more confident. This time, the archaeology department is not dumbfounded. Previously, I thought that their instructor was handsome and felt uncomfortable. But now, it seems that no matter how handsome he is, his ability is not good enough. Our instructor Zhang is the one with the most combat experience in the army. He's also very good at shooting. We've also asked around about the Bai guy. It turns out that he's not from the army at all. I don't know which random army he's from, but he suddenly came in without any ability at all. Although they were from different faculties, because they were the first team, they were now two classes next to each other. As they spoke, The people from the archaeology department could hear them. All of them were extremely angry. After all, this was how it was during military training. No one was willing to hear others badmouth their instructor. However, when they turned around, they saw that Baijuan did not have any emotional fluctuations. They did not know what to do. At this moment, a whistle was blown from above. The general idea was for all the instructors to gather. Aju's roommates coughed a few times and quickly seized the time to ask, "Instructor Bai, the competition is about to start. Don't you have anything to tell us?" Baijuan curled his thin lips and picked up the long spear beside his feet with one hand. "You just have to do your best. Leave the winning to me." It was just a few words. His tall and straight back was like an ancient war god. Especially the moment he raised the spear. Everyone was stunned by his last sentence. "Leave the winning to me." I'm shocked. He was indeed handsome. No instructor would instruct the students like this. It felt like they were being protected. In fact, in the hearts of Baijuan and the soldiers, their students were supposed to be protected. They were stationed at the border and risked their lives. Wasn't it so that the people who lived there could live a simple and happy life? It was precisely because of this that they could not bear to see some people use their family background to suppress others on campus. Or some people use military training as an excuse to seek a future for themselves. They could not care less about what they could not see. Since they had seen it, they would fight to their heart's content. After the officers had gathered, there were a total of 6 classes in the archaeology department. They were all from Baijuan's side. There were also a few other departments. Nearly 17 classes were all soldiers from the army. After all, time was limited. 5 students from each class would fall out and participate in the overall competition. In the end, the total score would be calculated. The students would compete first, and then the instructor would finish the competition. According to the order of the score, the most outstanding department would be evaluated first, and then the shooting class would be evaluated. The class with the most points would add 10 points when the total was summed up. From this, it could be seen the importance of the shooting competition. Moreover, at this point, it was no longer as simple as the score. It was a competition of face. There were also rules for the student competition to show fairness. Each class had 2 girls and 3 boys. Of course, Aju was in the competition team. After all, the students of the archaeology department were still confident in her strength. It was really not easy for a girl to pick up a gun, so they did not expect Aju to really hit the target. As long as she did not lose too badly, it would be fine. On the other side was Lu Zitong. As soon as she stood out, someone on the other side said, "Zitong just said that Commander Li usually teaches her how to hold a gun. The winner of this competition is already set in stone. I advise some people not to overestimate themselves. Do you think that shooting is a wrestling match? If you can win just by relying on brute force, then what's the difference between you and a peasant worker with a brick?" When the archaeology department heard this, bursts of fire rose in their throats. They were clearly talking about Aju. That tone was extremely unpleasant to hear. It was simply mocking. Aju also raised her eyes and glanced over indifferently. They did not know if it was their imagination, but they felt that those originally round eyes actually burst out with a coldness that could not be ignored. They must have seen wrongly, right? The few girls from the performance department were stunned. Before they could figure out what was going on, the whistle sounded again. "Students participating in the shooting competition, listen up. All of you step out." Swoosh. Rows and rows of people appeared. The officer gave another order. "Turn left, walk in unison." You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.